Call the December 1st, 2015 Planning Board meeting to order. The first item on the agenda tonight is the minutes of October 27th and November 9th.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend the approval of the minutes of October 27, November 9, 2015 as corrected.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Yes, okay. Next item, this is for public discussion. No, approval not required, sorry. Are there any?
There are none.
What's up? Usually they're sitting in front of me if they're here. The next item for public discussion is McGanset Crossing LLC Local Initiative Program. And I want to disclose that I serve on the EDIC with one of the applicants on this board. So it's just a disclosure on the EDIC.
Does that require you to recuse yourself?
It's up to my choice, Paul, if I want to or not, and that's why I decided to notify, disclose it.
No, you don't have to.
It's up to me.
I wouldn't think so.
If you would like to challenge that, you could.
No, I wouldn't think so. I'm just asking you a question.
You got your answer. For the applicant,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Peter Freeman, attorney. I practice at the Freeman Law Group in Yarmouthport on the Cape. With me tonight is Michael Galasso, principal of McGanset Crossing LLC. And the first thing, just housekeeping, if you will, I know that you're the planning board, but you're also sitting as the local housing partnership committee. So I don't know if the record for that should reflect it before you as in your capacity as the housing partnership committee. Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yep.
Correct?
yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So, in a nutshell, this is a project which had already been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals under Chapter 40B with a comprehensive permit in 2009. It was a local initiative program, subsidizing agency project, which means that the town of Falmouth, through its selectmen, basically co-applied with the applicant back then, which was Covey Construction, for approval initially through the Department of Housing and Community Development. That's the so-called subsidizing agency site approval letter. Then it went to the ZBA, and the ZBA did issue a comprehensive permit for 10 for-sale units and 3 affordable units. That was 2009. I wasn't involved then, and I didn't know, and I don't know Covey Corporation, Covey Construction. But I presume it was the recession that led to his inability to go forward, and ultimately, in about 2013, he sold the project to Michael Galasso and the LLC that Michael has created, McGanset Crossing LLC, which is the applicant before you. So, Michael taking over the project, and by the way, he did go through one step, which is the transfer approval of the project, and the comprehensive permit had to be approved by, the transfer had to be approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The permit was also extended a number of times by the way, so we still have a permit. And we also got the more procedural, but we got the approval of the state DHCD to the transfer as well. So the next stage, which we hope is just about the final stage, other than going to the ZBA, is because it's a local initiative project, the protocol is to work with the town, meaning the selectmen, to get approval of these modifications. In reviewing the project, Mr. Galasso believes that it would be improved by some changes, which we've submitted a variety of materials, and he will go over all of the details with his plans and boards to explain to you and to answer any questions. But the process is, normally, we could just go right back to the ZBA. That's our ultimate place to go. But because it's a local initiative-led program, we need to get the selectmen to approve the changes. And we already got them approved on the procedural aspect from DHCD, but we still have to have the selectmen approve them, and then we would go to the ZBA. So now that you have your local housing partnership committee, which of course many towns do, the protocol in the town is to go to you folks. Hopefully we will make you happy and show you that the proposed changes are beneficial and are good and are worthy, and that you would send a memo or a letter, whatever it is, to the selectmen advising that you would support this change to the project. So in a nutshell, that's where we're at. After we reviewed you, we would go to the selectmen to get their support, and then we would go to the zoning board of appeals, which could be a hearing process and could be considered an insubstantial change, we're not sure, but it would be certainly a meeting with the ZBA, and it could be a public hearing. And that would be ultimately leading to the start of construction of the project, presumably at this point, maybe not with the winter coming, it wouldn't be immediate, but certainly next spring, or depending on the weather, perhaps earlier. So in a nutshell, that's procedurally where we are at and why we are here. So I'll just stop there and have Michael come up and describe the project to you.
Great, thank you, Peter. Michael Galasso with McAnsett Crossing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to go over a few things with you this evening, touch a little bit on the history. As Peter said, I acquired the property in 2013 as an already permitted 40B with an existing approved LIP application from the town, a site eligibility letter from DHCD, and a comprehensive permit from the ZBA that was issued in 2009. So after acquiring it, we conducted a number of meetings with the ZBA administrator, the town building and engineering staff in late 2013 and 2014 to review the changes we are proposing and have incorporated their comments into the site plan you have before you tonight. At one point, we were looking at revising the project as affordable rental units, but after taking a closer look, it wasn't economically feasible to do this project as rentals without a large subsidy. So let's talk about the changes. First, as Peter mentioned, change in ownership. The prior owner,
Excuse me, Mike, we don't have a plan.
okay, they were submitted to you on August 24th with the whole package of information.
Yes, it was August 24th, and prior to my being involved, June 3rd, 2015, there was also a letter that Michael submitted. I can pass on.
This is the first time it's been in front of the board.
Well, I directed a letter to your attention August 24th. I don't know what town hall does with it when they get such letters.
But in that package on August 24th was all the plans for the project, site plans, landscape plans, building plans, and a comparison between the two. So that was submitted on August 24th.
Can you go upstairs and get them?
I think I have to, I mean, he's describing something, I only look at things the week before our agenda. If they're, if they're not on the agenda, I don't start studying everything that comes in. I haven't even looked at them yet.
Well, August 24th was the letter and attachments that we sent to you, Mr. Chairman, that was then referred here at the meeting. You discussed it and referred to town council because the letter came from an attorney. So Mr. Freeman can give you a copy.
I've seen it.
We don't need
I've
a
seen the letter. I haven't, you're talking about the plans I haven't seen. I'm finding myself in an awkward position.
They were attached to.
They were included.
Yeah, they're included with
And I made
the
multiple efforts through Mr. Curry and the town offices to make sure that you folks saw them.
Call a recess.
I go upstairs and grab the plans for the board. You should have the elevations and the plans there with you, Mike.
I do, yep.
Let me ask you-
Hang on, just let me finish. The board typically has a presentation by the applicant to show them your plans. They typically don't go into great detail until they've seen your plans. So I'll go upstairs and get the drawings for the board. They'll have them here for reference, but you have your elevations there. Just show the board.
Sure.
They're introducing it tonight. Everybody stay calm. I think a 2-minute recess. I'll go upstairs and get it.
Yep, I do.
He was just referencing something I couldn't see. That's the only reason why I brought it up.
Mr. Chairman,
Not there yet.
motion for a 2-minute recess, please.
Yeah, we have a motion to recess.
2-minute recess, so we can get the plans.
Is there a second? We're in recess.
You guys share that one?
Wait for the plans of the street.
I know where this one's at.
Okay, we'll reconvene the meeting. Okay, just a second. Brian's going to go over some procedures.
Just remember, we're not a site plan review, it's more like it's a local housing partnership review. You don't pour over the plans, you let the applicant show you the drawings, and we'll go from there. Okay?
Okay.
Off you go.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, if you would tell us where this is.
Okay, so this is in North Falmouth. It is north of the intersection 151 and 28. It's past where recently constructed there was a Cape Cod cooperative bank built. And then there's a long piece of property. This gives you a better idea of the location. So again, you're 28A North Falmouth Highway, 151, and it's this piece right here. Okay, on the west side of the road. So wooded area right now.
Okay, here it is.
So the changes that we're here to discuss this evening are really...
the North
are
Post
two.
office.
One is a change in ownership, which is from the prior owner, Covey Construction, which is the Holly Park project, that's what he called it at that time. Fine contractor, but had no prior experience developing either a 40B project or affordable housing. So that's one reason why he reached out to us. The new owner is Megantic Crossing LLC, whose members have over 25 years' experience developing affordable housing. And when the ZBA approved the transfer of the permit from Covey to us, it was conditioned on forming a limited dividend LLC prior to issuance of the building permit for the project. So that's the Megantic Cross LLC. So that's one of the changes from the previous LIP that was approved by the town to the LIP now. It's a change in ownership, which is something that the LIP committee and the selectmen need to approve. So that's part one. So part two is the proposed plan changes. So if you look at the site plan that's here in front of you, it shows the site plan that was approved in 2009 and our proposed changes for 214. So let me take you through what some of those changes are. So the prior plan contained two large 3-unit triplex buildings. You can see those in the middle of the site. With interior units, because they're a triplex, they're townhouses, so they're interior units, that were identified as 2 of the 3 affordable units. We wanted to redesign the project to eliminate the triplex buildings that have inferior interior units that receive less sunlight and fresh air and replace them with duplex buildings where everyone, both the market rate and the affordable units, receive equal amounts of sunlight and fresh air. So that was one of the first changes, was changing the mix and eliminating the 2 triplex buildings. Also, the prior building plans that were approved were for all 3-bedroom units with all 3 bedrooms up on the 2nd floor. So we wanted to redesign those units to place one of the bedrooms on the ground floor and to redesign to add 2-bedroom units, which would be more affordable. The revised plan now have 6 3-bedroom units and 6 2-bedroom units. So you notice that we increased the number of units from the prior approval from 10 to 12. With the site on a public transit corridor, it's connected to Cape Transit. It's a stop on the Bourne Run. And with its close proximity to other services in North Falmouth, we wanted to better utilize the site, and we're able to increase the number of units from 10 to 12, all in duplex buildings. Also, with the proposed changes, it was no longer economically feasible to develop just 10 units. So some of the changes that we're proposing are energy efficiency. prior project didn't have any energy efficiency back in 2008, 2009. Maybe it wasn't as important as it is now, but we now are proposing renewable solar energy on the roofs of all the units, reducing consumption by up to 60%. The project also includes electric car changing station in all the garages. The prior project had all surface parking. You can tell from looking at the site plan. The new plan before you tonight has attached one-car garages for each unit. We've also added a community garden for the residents, a sheltered bus stop. We've also reduced the height of the buildings and the architectural style of the buildings. The architectural style of the buildings is more in keeping with the historic architectural style in Megantic. The prior project building plans were a set of plans that what we call were catalog cut. They weren't specifically designed for this site. So we have redesigned the elevations and actually have reduced the height of the buildings, and they're all duplex buildings. So we wanted to incorporate what we felt were some of the historical architectural features of homes in the Megantic area. I handed out to you a sheet that compares the Holly Park condominium project, the previous project that was approved in 2009, with what we are proposing tonight, and those have some of the other changes. I do want to point out that where it says that we've reduced the setback, going back to the site plan a moment, because we are on a state highway 28A, we have to have a 25-foot setback. That has not changed. That setback remains the same. What we did do is move the buildings up closer to that 25-foot setback. That was the change. But there still is that 25-foot buffer that runs along the whole length of the property.
Is this line here, the setback line?
Yes, that's the 25-foot setback. So we moved the buildings up closer to that in order to get the parking in the back and get the garages to work. The general circulation of the project, that loop road around the back, is something that the town engineering department is very much in favor of. We did come up with an alternate plan, but they wanted to stay with that loop road. The fire department was pleased that we weren't going to do triplex buildings that were going to require a fire sprinkler. In exchange, we're going to be installing a new fire hydrant across the street for them. So those are the major changes. Available to answer any questions that you may have. We've been working on this, as you can tell, for a number of years. We submitted the original LIP application back in January, so we're anxious to move this ahead, and would appreciate your consideration this evening so we can move it forward to the selectmen. And I'm available and Peter's available to answer any questions you may have. Let me put up the renderings that we've had done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm available for any questions you may have.
I just have a quick, it's kind of a gee-whiz question. You said that you were making some of the apartments with a bedroom downstairs. Is that the 3 bedrooms, or some of the 2 bedrooms have one up and down?
The 3-bedroom units have a bedroom downstairs, a master suite on the ground floor, and then 2 bedrooms up. The 2-bedroom units, the 2 bedrooms are upstairs.
Just asking. Thank you.
Next page shows.
Oh, okay. Didn't turn that one.
Yes, Paul, go ahead.
You're still there? There you are.
Yes.
This comparison sheet together shows the front setback is only 3 feet.
That's correct. It's 3 feet from that 25-foot setback. Yes.
The other one, you have an average building height, but it looks like unit A is quite a bit taller than the others. What is the range of height? On average, it could be very
It's a decent size.
much
The
higher
first
than
house was
the
3 bedroom, wasn't that big?
C, for example.
Yeah, I don't think any of them, it's really caused by the change in the roof line, is what's changing the height of the buildings a little bit. We get a little bit different architectural flair. I don't think it varies much more than 4 or 5 feet.
Where are the affordable units going to be?
We wanted to put them close to the play area. We thought that was most appropriate and everything, but DHCD and their approval of the changes in the transfer to us have requested that they be dispersed throughout the project. So we haven't identified them yet, but we'll probably get one close to the, one on one end, one on the other, one in the middle.
So how many are there?
3. That's still 25%. So as Peter mentioned, we still have other steps to go. Once your recommendation gets forwarded to the selectmen, we then have to go back to the ZBA for them to take a look at the proposed plan changes.
Yes, Doug?
So, Mr. Glasso, this, I guess, will be the planning board's first time being involved with a local initiative program. Do you have experience with the local initiative program yourself on other projects?
Yes, 20 Shore Street was one of the projects that PRI, which is the nonprofit, affiliated with.
And who partnered with you through that, the selectmen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I have a question. Can you describe the finished materials for us quickly?
Clapboard, cedar shingles, and asphalt roofs.
Trim material?
Probably PVC, and either Anderson or Pella windows. This architect likes to use Pella windows.
That's what I was looking for. And the grade of the roofing? You said the roofing, what grade is it?
I mean, as far as the asphalt shingles, or the asphalt.
I was looking for, I usually hear it described as, an architectural grade or a standard grade, one's 20 years, one's 30. I'm just wondering.
We usually use architectural.
They're pretty uniform now with a limited lifetime warranty on almost all
Almost all
shingles.
of them. But isn't the architectural grade, well, it has a different look to it, first of all.
Yeah.
It's the standard now.
It is the standard?
3 tabs are no longer wind resistant for our area.
Out of date, sorry.
There's a right answer, though.
Yeah, architectural grade is what I was looking for.
That's right.
Bad question, right answer. Go ahead.
Looks like the difference between type A and type B is about 5 feet, 4 inches.
Yeah.
Difference in height. It's quite a bit taller.
But you want to vary it, you don't want it all the same.
Yeah, but it also gives a characteristic look, different houses, different buildings. Yeah. I like that it wasn't cookie cutter. 5 are the same.
Okay, so this is a discussion, so we'll keep talking about it while we look at it. Maybe does anyone in the audience want to talk about it? Yeah, go ahead. We're going to come back to the board. We're just looking
Should we move
at the
the
same
easel?
time to keep it moving.
Mike, could we move the easel?
Yes. So we'll come back. I just wanted to keep it rolling while we have time to review the plans. It's a hard look, guys.
Yeah.
I can't see them, so I rely on you to look at them.
Yeah.
52 2-foot, so it's
Much better.
Hi, Annie Conley, I'm Executive Director for the Falmouth Housing Trust. We've done a lot of work with DHCD and other nonprofit housing entities, and we are familiar with the LIP process. Just as a point of clarification, maybe for the board, there are development guidelines approved by DHCD and uniformly adopted by Massachusetts Housing Partnership and also the Mass Housing Financing Agency that probably are relevant to this discussion about LIP. It spells out what quantifies and qualifies as a local initiative program, which is a partnership between the municipality and the developer. The other thing is, are any of the units visitable?
Yes, they are.
That's a big one, so tell us about that.
Glad you brought that up. Yes, it's a question that comes up often at ZBA, and we've designed from our meetings with the ZBA administrator and the town engineering, all these units are visitable. So you can get into all of them without having to go up a stair. You can wheelchair in. So that was an important part of our design. We spent a lot of time working the grades in order to make sure that that would happen. Any other questions?
Nancy Hayward, West Falmouth. I had heard about moved into the project long ago, and then it sort of disappeared. One of the things I would really like to get straight is, I would like to know where this project is. I am familiar with the crossing of County Road and 28A, and I can't recite every single building that's on the west side as you start north. You get up to the post office. Is this project south of the post office or north of the post office?
It's north. It's north of it.
It's north of the post office.
Yes.
All right. And I understand what the setback will be for this. I have a comment to make, and it will probably turn out to be that this is not the proper board to make the comment in. But I would like to comment about the speed on 28A. And this is going to come up again and again. There are developments in West Falmouth. The speed north there is 45 miles an hour. Now, I don't know how many people you're going to have coming out onto the road, but whatever the design of the in and out on that is, needs to take into consideration that this is not just little old county 28A like it used to be. This is high speed, and my goodness gracious sakes, the speed limit is 45 miles an hour. Believe me, people don't go 45 miles an hour. Thank you.
Brian, has the town engineers reviewed,
Nancy's right, not your thing.
for safety it is, right? Not even-
Recall, not here tonight.
Not here tonight.
I mean, just one additional comment. We did review the changes with the North Falmouth Village Association
One way in,
last
one way out.
summer, and we held a public meeting at the North Falmouth Elementary School, notified all the property owners within 300 feet, presented the changes at that meeting too. We've had 2 public meetings outside of here on the proposed changes.
What are you saying, too much frontage on the lot?
Any questions? Bring them forward for all of us. What is your question?
It's not really a question, it's a comment. I don't know whether the lot, the reason I was talking over here is I couldn't see the plan myself very well. I don't know if there's enough room on the lot, it looks like there might be, but Michael paid a lot of attention to the variety of roof lines. But it might be also a little bit more attractive if the units were somewhat offset by 3 to 5 feet, so you don't get this almost monolithic straight line across. And I don't know if it's possible because of the width of the lot. And that's design, and I'm not quite sure really what we can say about design under a lip.
Say anything you want.
We're here to give an opinion, basically. You know, to the selectmen, so I understood the applicant addressed that with the requirement for the road going behind the property. It's kind of hard to fit it in between.
That's what I'm looking at, is I didn't have the dimensions,
Right.
and that's why I was kind of saying, okay, what is that? Which is why I really wasn't talking out loud right then. But it looks like to me that everything is just totally taken up, and so there isn't much of an option to do anything.
It appears like because they made the loop road, which
Uh-huh.
everybody likes better, which is a
Right.
one-way in and one-way out, it's going to limit what you need because the
Yeah.
fire department needs their space and so forth and on, so.
Yeah, and the lot itself does not have
Right.
a lot of width there.
Okay, guys, ask the questions so we all can hear.
We're not asking questions,
Okay.
we're clarifying.
I want to hear.
Just looking at the locus map. Have to burn it upside down. So
Okay,
So I guess we'll make that a question.
go ahead.
So, Mr. Glasso, is that the property line in the back that's indicated? Is there any room for Ms. Kerfoot's idea?
Yeah, as part of your discussion, it isn't very tight from that width, and it's tight because of the 25 feet setback that we have in the front, but there is some room, because we are set back from that setback, 3 feet. So there is some room to move some of those buildings up a little bit, move some of them back. I think that's something that we could accomplish. I'm not sure if we'll get that. But, because of the curvature of the site a little bit, as you're coming up the hill there, I think that's going to, create some variety. And also, we've got to keep the majority of and we want to keep most of that vegetation. If you go by the site, it's heavily wooded, and we want to keep that, as much of that vegetation as we can. We've got to clean it out in that 25-foot buffer zone too. So there'll be quite a bit of, currently mature trees that we want to maintain in that 25-foot, area. So I think that's going to help break up that look. I think if there were no trees there and right up to the road, I think I'd agree that you'd see it as a building that was, yeah. So I think the vegetation that we're maintaining and looking at maybe bringing the buildings up a little bit. Towards the back, we're very tight. The lot does slope down. The railroad tracks are not too far behind this site. So.
Yes, Ralph?
I'm just wondering if this board wants to make a site visit to this situation. It's the first time we've done something like this, and the way it sounds like we're part of the local housing partnership committee, along with the board of selectmen. Is that right? Is that what makes up the committee?
You are acting as a local partnership, selectmen are their own entity. The board, whether you want to take a site view.
Because the letter from Attorney Freeman indicates in paragraph number 5 that Doug Jones, chairman of the Board of Selectmen with the Local Housing Partnership Committee. And I'm just wondering, do the two of us make up the Local Housing Partnership Committee or just us?
You are that partnership. Selectmen are their own entity. Both must sign the LIP application.
Okay. Partnership to me indicates more than one entity, and we are sitting as one entity, so I'm a little bit confused.
I think we're supposed to be partnering with the developer is the idea.
Yeah.
This is the way the town can bring forward housing projects. It's supposed to be what they call a friendly. We're supposed to work with them.
I understand
I believe we're supposed to be is with him. That is my understanding.
Yes, that's my interpretation
Is
as well.
that your understanding, Mr. Freeman?
In general terms, yes, but I think it's important to basically explain one distinction. What it really is a municipally sponsored project.
I understand that.
And that connotation is that the developer certainly works together with the town and vice versa. Partnership, obviously in the legal sense, it's not a partnership because he has sole development responsibility and liability, which of course the town wouldn't want. So as a figure of speech, it is intended to be a partnership. It's a good analogy. But legally, it's simply a municipally sponsored project, and its process that we're involved with now, as Mr. Curry explained, many towns, now Falmouth as well, have a local housing partnership committee, or sometimes it's an affordable housing committee, that basically doesn't have per se regulatory functions in terms of absolute approvals, but they do make important recommendations. I say important, to me they're important. I do a lot of these types of developments, and presumably the selectmen listen to the folks who are on the local partnership committee. And so that's the process. He would make a recommendation. It's the selectmen who ultimately have authority to approve it and then to join with us in the application. I will say, in anticipation, hopefully, of a positive result, the application, although this is a modification, so it may not strictly be required, but the initial applications, if there is a partnership committee, the application to DHCD has a place for the selectmen to sign and for the local partnership committee to sign, and of course for the developer to sign. For a modification like this, there's no formal application, quote unquote, but what DHCD will be looking for will be a letter of support from you folks, and then ultimately the vote of support, that joint sponsorship by the selectmen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have to ask your patience. This is our first one,
Absolutely.
so we're working through it. I myself, Ralph, would like to go as well. Site visit, I think, I have a hard time saying this is great unless I've walked the site. I'm ready to do it immediately to keep the process moving, but
Right. Well,
how about you,
Yeah.
anybody else?
I'd like to go.
I'm in favor of that, because, I mean, I don't see, like you said, I don't see anything that stands out to say I wouldn't, but it's just, I think protocol, we should actually
I
go
don't-
visit these sites.
If somebody ever challenges this and I said I wasn't there, I don't think I could say that. So I think I have to go to the site.
I could ask Brian then. Brian, are we meeting again next week?
Yes, you'll be meeting the 8th and the 15th.
So could this item be on our agenda for next week, or is it full?
No, I was anticipating this on the agenda next week for some formal motion.
Okay, thank you. So then we could do a site visit between now and then?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is the site staked? If we go there, what are we going to see?
No, it's not staked, but you'll notice it because it starts right after the Cape Cod Cooperative Bank property, which was also owned by Mr. Covey. And so that's, yeah, that's to the south, and then right after that, you'll notice it. Like I said, it's very heavily wooded. And the town actually owns a piece of property that abuts this. It basically goes right down to the corner. It's that intersection that you would take if you're going down to McGansett and underneath the bridge. That's where the name McGansett Crossing comes from. It's the railroad bridge that goes underneath it. And I'd be more than willing to meet anyone out there if you felt that it was appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
I've got a question. Is the property in a water resource protection overlay district or a coastal pond overlay?
No, it's not.
Thank you.
Yes, Pat?
Okay, it was described that we don't have any kind of legal, anything to do with this. So I would really like to know what our function is. Do we just say, okay, we like the design, go ahead? I don't know the parameters that we're operating under with the LIP. If there's no kind of legal obligation that we have when we say something in a partnership, my understanding of a partnership is quite different from what this apparently is.
Yes, Brad, please.
The best analogy I can give the board is, just like you make a recommendation to the town meeting on a zoning article that's non-binding, it's still a requirement that you report to them and give them a recommendation. And this is essentially the analogy I give you here. The selectmen can accept it, they can reject it, they can modify it, but it's necessary for you, under the mechanisms we have here with these LIP programs, to offer a recommendation, is my understanding.
Yes, Doug?
I also have a question about the process. Do we take responsibility for the monitoring, or does the developer do that and report to us?
No, even though it's a LIP, it would be no different than any of the comprehensive permit projects. The subsidized agency, in this case it's DHCD, is responsible for both the regulatory agreement, which the town will sign, by the way, but the regulatory agreement has certain monitoring provisions, and typically what happens is DHCD actually monitors the affordability aspects and the eligibility, and Michael either himself, because he and his firm have experience with lotteries, might well do the lottery themselves, or else another experienced company would do the lotteries that basically take the applications, screen them for the qualifications as to income eligibility, and similar to a bank process, but not quite to the degree the banks will, of course, review the applications as well. But DHCD basically is sent all of those applications and income information from the potential pool of applicants, and typically DHCD themselves acts as a monitoring agent as opposed to hiring a separate monitoring agent. But certainly copies can be provided to the town. As a matter of fact, one of the things we provided, not that you need to really get into it, but there is the summary of the so-called affirmative fair housing marketing plan that is part of the approval process. It would have had to have been approved years ago in the initial go-around, but that was long ago, And as I say, we submitted a summary of that plan, which DHCD will also look at and approve, and explains where the advertising and promotion of the development will be, and what steps are being taken, and the whole process to obtain the affordable eligible buyers. And DHCD will look at it not just in general, but now there is a so-called final approval, quote-unquote, process. So once we, again, hopefully with support, and then with the selectmen, get the LIP approval for the modification, and then, as we said earlier, we go back to the ZBA, and then with whatever other conditions, if any, they put in, once we get that, we then have to go back to DHCD for so-called final approval, which includes the drafting and execution of that regulatory agreement with the monitoring and all of those things.
Question, what are the rates of the units, the market rate units and the affordable units? What are you budgeting right now?
And again, the budget was submitted to your office. Make sure I got the most recent one. The affordable units, the 2 bedrooms right now are $188,000. The 3 bedrooms, $212,000. The market rate, 2 bedrooms, $495,000, and the 3 bedrooms at $595,000. Those are the current projected sales prices. Sure. The 2-bedroom units, affordable at $188,000, and the 3-bedroom units at $212,000. And these numbers were calculated by the Cape Cod Commission of Affordable Housing folks. We went to them and had them figure it all out for us.
Any other board members, any more for tonight? Yes, Pat?
What I want to make sure of is that this has changed hands a number of times. And the last statement under 1B is that Mr. Freeman represents to us that TRI will become a member of Megantic Crossing LLC upon the closing of the construction loan for this project. A member is one thing, but I'm assuming that there are other members of Megantic Crossing. But it's bad to make an assumption that Mr. Galasso will actually be the director of this project. And I don't know whether he will be or not, or how this will work.
Yep. I will remain as a sort of the managing member of the LLC. That's what they're calling an LLC. And then TRI will be added as a member too. And we won't know till we get a more firm financial commitment from our construction lender whether or not TRI will also need to be a managing member too. May be a requirement of the construction lender. So what we do is we just amend the current, we've already formed Megantic Crossing LLC, and we'll just amend that prior to us pulling a building permit, because it is a condition that we have that amended, and it is a condition from the ZBA that the LLC consists of myself and TRI, and so we will amend that prior to pulling the building permit and starting construction.
I have a question from Ms. Conley.
I'm going to wait till we finish everything on the board before I go back to the public. Yes?
I just have a general comment. It appears that this site is generally level around 52, 54 feet. Until you get to the northern end, where it drops off at least 18 to 20 feet. And that is where you have the community garden.
Yeah.
So the rest of it is generally level.
It is fairly level, you're correct. It does drop off as we go to the north.
Thank you.
Any, yes, go ahead, Al.
I just now noticed that it is a one-way traffic on the road going on the units. And that was what the engineering people agreed to.
That's what they required in 2009, and even though we proposed some additional changes to it, that's what they wanted to stick with.
Okay.
At the town engineer?
Town engineering. And then we, excuse me, we still have to get Mass DOT approval for the curb cuts. So we submitted an application to them. They've had some change in employees there, and so they're still pending for those 2 curb cuts.
Any questions, more questions from the audience? Yes?
Hi again. There's a whole section at checked with DHCD with the LIP guidelines.
Is this a question, or are you telling us?
I'm maybe trying to do a point of clarification,
Go ahead, what are you trying to clarify?
that your responsibility and all the eligibility criteria and what exactly is supposed to be happening is spelled out by DHCD.
Thank you.
And then in points of, with the lottery, holding the lottery and a monitoring agent, you can't have related parties. It has to be an arm's length transaction per the state requirement. So I'll email it to Brian and he can share it with you, but he has it too.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes,
I'll make a question of it. So
or comments, you can comment as well. Go ahead.
It's
The
fire
discussion.
club. It was said across the street. That's across the state highway 28A is where the fire plug is being proposed for the development. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say I like the looks of the project to begin with, so.
So we'll
It's a good
have it on
start.
our next
Site
agenda,
visit.
and we'll figure time, get out there this week?
Again, the board members are free to visit on their own. Did you want to go as a quorum? If you go as a quorum, you post it? Or you can go out on your own and take a view?
If we're free to go on our own, I'd prefer that. I mean, I'm familiar with the site anyways, but
We'll give the board time to view the site, come into the office, look at the plans in more detail, as you typically do.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what the board's pleasure was.
I'd be happy to go alone, I don't care to be organized or not.
Ralph?
Well, we just need permission from the landowner for us to go there, other than as a group. So we would need like a blanket permission to visit the property if we go on our own. Whereas in the past, when we went as a group, the property owner meets us there and we all look at it at one time. So if we're going to go individually, then we need permission from the property owner to go at any time.
I don't know if you need it in writing. I'm more than willing to provide it in writing, but for the record, you have my permission as the property owner to visit the site and walk upon it. And if you need that in writing for any reason, I'm more than willing to provide it to Mr. Carver.
One last question then. Is this the edge of the pavement on the edge of the plan here for the cooperative bank? Are we
Yes.
directly adjacent to that parking lot?
Yeah, there's a little parking area there.
Okay.
So if there's anything else that's needed for your permission, then please let me know. I'm willing to provide it.
Check with council for liability and all that.
Okay. All right, thank you. And thank you for everyone's comments and questions. One more? Yes, go ahead.
I noticed when I was drawing the site plan in relation to Mrs. Haywood's comment, looks like there's 12 wet taps by the town across the state highway for service. Is that the way I read this?
Sorry.
6 here and 6 here, it looks like, and they're
Yes.
wet cuts under the state highway.
Yep, we have to go across in order to make that connection. And there'll be 1 meter for each one of the units there.
Surprised they don't do one and have it transmission line. That's a design issue.
That's what went in front of the city, the town engineer.
Okay,
discussion.
I'd like to ask the board's indulgence to take the photovoltaic arrays out of order. I've understood that the proponent has childcare responsibilities. Get help.
I move that we take the photovoltaic arrays out of order.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Please come up.
I was not aware of really the details that I needed to provide provide you with tonight.
This is a discussion.
Okay.
I think of just as the Energy Committee's, they just tell the board what was on the Energy Committee's mind with the article at town meeting.
Sure.
So they have a good understanding.
Okay.
It's best to get a little face time sometimes.
Okay.
That's what it's more.
So the Energy Committee was looking at the limited amount of space where you could do as-of-right siting for ground-mounted solar. And having reviewed the model as-of-right bylaw that the Department of Energy Resources has, we thought it might be a good thing for the town of Falmouth to take that up and explore the possibility of allowing as-of-right ground-mounted PV in places not just that are zoned light industrial C. That was really the gist of what we were trying to accomplish.
I know I'm very interested in thinking it works in light industrial B because it's all in one place and we're all familiar where that lies. My concern is in studying in light industrial A, the impact with other uses on the site.
Can you give me an example? Just so
Well, what I know about light industrial A is I own a couple pieces of it, and I know it has a lot of residential development all over it. And I just am wondering, are you envisioning residential houses with ground-mounted solar arrays surrounding them?
again-
It's a by right use when you do it this
Sure.
way, so I'm trying to understand.
No, at the residential level, some people are interested in it for, and you have to forgive me because I'm not aware if you're in the light industrial A, is that
I think it's A. It's A, I'm thinking Carlson Lane and,
So is that like groups? Sort of like what we
Condominiums.
heard of just prior?
well,
Like groups of houses together and
yes,
there might be a larger
they're
parking
twos and
area?
threes, duplexes and long lines. It's Carlson Lane, it's
Okay.
treetops. There's several of them.
So
There's
our
my
thoughts
property
were
off of
around
Locust Street.
where there's a parking lot, there's an opportunity to put up a canopy.
Well, that wouldn't be ground mounted, would it?
It is absolutely.
That is ground mounted?
And a good example is the skating rink. The
Yep.
parking is covered with PV. Makes
Right.
nice shade for parking, and
But that's, okay, that's different though, right?
I'm just saying
That's an
that's
accessory use.
I'm just saying it's
And
example
we're
of
talking
how,
about a primary use, isn't that correct? I may be confused, but I thought this was a primary use.
All right, so I guess what the board must make clear that the Energy Committee wants to see these ground-mounted photovoltaics allowed in other, whatever the districts are, other zoning districts as a matter of right, as a principal use.
Principal use, and that's the difference.
We haven't really, I mean,
No,
the
you got
idea
that
was to
far?
provide power on site.
Well, there's a big difference. And that's what we need to get at.
So the board knows, and the committee knows that, say, the hockey rink has it in the parking lot.
It's accessory.
It's accessory
Right,
to that
that's the
principal
difference.
use. Lots of homes have them up on the roofs, unless their neighbors' trees block their roof and you can't get it down.
But they are allowed as an accessory use already, even in
Yeah, so-
residential
So
neighborhoods.
accessory uses, so the clarification I think the board was looking for the Energy Committee's article was whether or not the thought process was to have these as of right, as, just stand alone like on the landfill.
Okay.
Is that what the gist of the zoning article was about, or was it really to make it more by right on other types of, other uses?
So, just for my clarification, in terms of, let's say, in the example of the capped landfill, that's to sell into the grid.
Correct.
Okay, so accessory use, you're using that power on site.
That's the
So
difference.
the gist is that you would be able to use that power on site. Now, we've also thought about that vacuous space that the Steamship Authority has paved out there. And in an instance like that, the net metering regulations that we have would be great if the steamship decided that they would like to put up a large number of arrays down that parking lot and net meter the credits back to their facility in Woods Hole and wherever else they have electricity needs to be offset by their net metering credits. But frankly, we didn't really get into the weeds too much in terms of those kinds of details. It was,
That's what we need to do, to
Okay.
understand it. That's really why I wanted to have more discussion
Sure.
amongst ourselves and figure this out. I think it's a great idea, but we got some work to do here.
well, I think it gets a little complicated when you start thinking about, and just again, to sort of use totally, out of the air, the steamship authority, where they have electric car vehicle charging ports. I can't speak to how, do they charge for those kinds of things, and sort of, you get into the weeds pretty fast on that stuff, which was why we as a committee were like, well, some places, if you go into the Charles Hotel in Cambridge, they don't charge you for electric vehicle charging. Other places have it set up in, you can go to Kohl's in Hyannis, or you can go to the Barnstable High School or the county complex, and there's no charge for it. So we didn't get that far down the path in terms of making that determination.
I'd like to figure out where we can put them. I'd like this board to review for light industrial B to see if it's possible to have it be a primary use, if that's okay, and figure out where it could be. But I think there already allows an accessory use in other areas already. I mean, isn't that the case, Brian?
Right, the question really, and it's pretty much been clarified here, more as we get into the weeds.
Right.
In these other zoning districts, do we allow it as a principal standalone use?
Principal instead of primary.
And I think the other thing that we were thinking about from the Energy Committee's perspective is municipal spaces, Gus Candy parking lot, other places where there might be opportunity to put up the canopies for EV charging, as well as, that's the future, but another
Who
way
would
to
use
generate-
that power?
Well, that's a question. If it's a municipal, if it's on municipal property, then,
But to
Yes.
go into the grid, it's a little bit more
but
complicated
it's
than that.
net metering credits that get applied to other,
But
Yes,
that's,
with my experience.
but that's
it's
not the
pretty-
factor of the bylaw, Jim. That's not, she's just trying to find out ways to get it, You're asking who would use that. That's not, who would use the power isn't necessarily what we're looking at here in this bylaw. We're trying to find out what the Energy Committee was looking at for areas. Was there any specific areas that they might have been thinking about that could be used? Because it kind of worried me when I looked at it. I was like, wait a minute, could this just be anywhere? And, your neighbor could throw in they have an acre yard, can they just throw in an acre of ground mounted next to anything? That's what my question was on this, because it says large. It wasn't really the small. This is, for the
Right,
most part,
if you look at the
For
full
large.
DOER model, it has it broken down into, and it is primarily looking at large scale, but one of the things that, property, open space around here, we don't think that cutting down trees is a viable option to put up PV. So in cases where you already have paved spaces and there are power needs, those are good places to put up ground-mounted PV structures or cap landfills, places that are already disturbed and don't have shading implications. Those are the kinds of places that we would like to see more adoption of this technology.
Pat?
I'd like to understand, because I'm having huge difficulty in understanding how a parking canopy is considered ground-mounted. I think of ground-mounted as right there on the ground.
Sure,
That's
that's-
a roof.
So there's roof-mounted PV, which uses the
Right.
roof as the mount, it's basically racking that is attached to the roof. Anything, a parking lot canopy has a foundation, it's attached to the ground. So that's the difference, is that you're looking at something that, whether it's on a pole or it's on a rack that is basically right against the ground. If you've gone to see any of the other ground-mounted PV arrays that are on municipal landfills, those are the kinds of things.
Well, I'm thinking, I think the question is that first a structure with a garage and a roof, and then you're putting it on the roof, and then it wouldn't be ground mounted, because now you have a building permit, you have a foundation, a structure, a roof. Those are what we're used to seeing on sites with drainage and everything. And then putting solar on top of it, that wouldn't be ground mounting. But you're making, does this solar panel that you think of, because it's not accessory, would you park underneath it, it would keep the rain off you too, or is it just solar panels in the air?
Well, the ground-mounted PV can be on just, basically racked up, it's the height of
That I understand.
of the desk, or you can go, the one example that we have around here is the skating rink.
And that
Yeah,
is,
I think the confusion, for me anyways, is that's where this is getting confusing for us,
Okay.
because that's an accessory use, and it's not, doesn't have to be ground mounted, and so it kind of, we're mixing things together here.
but a carport,
There's a structure, it
It's a
has to be built, get a building permit, has to have framing,
but it's really just a pole, a bunch of poles.
we're getting
so-
into definitions here.
but-
We're getting into definitions,
And
and that
I
is,
haven't looked into
well, that's the
what
mix.
qualifies it.
That is what we're having trouble
Right.
with. Maybe our builder here will help us out.
It does say in the state's version, and we'll have to develop our own,
Yeah.
that they all need building permits.
Yes.
So
No,
that's
but
gonna,
but is it on a structure, or is it standalone? I
these
mean,
are standalone
They're-
structures.
Yeah.
They're their own structure with a pole that supports the roof.
I understand clearly when they're accessory to a building, that part is
Well,
very...
regardless if they're accessory to a building or not, they're just standalone. They're ground-mounted posts. I've seen them all over. They're,
Except they're allowed by right now, they're already allowed, and we're trying to change the bylaw to put them other places, so you have to indulge me to this question.
Well, are they really allowed? Could we build a huge array across the parking lot at the rec without any other permission from this board at this time?
I know, I understand that people understand where's the power gonna go, but it's pretty difficult to build them unless you have someone to buy the power, permission to add them to the grid. I have
But-
spent a
Well,
little
that's
time
not
doing
why
that'll
we're
work
here.
itself out as we go through the process. I mean, they won't come to us and ask to do it unless they can work it
Okay,
out.
I also don't think we need to design, say something's possible unless it can actually be done, so I like to look at it practically.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think if we,
I
it
do too.
wouldn't be a bad idea to cover every parking lot in town with them if, if it worked out.
I'd like to think about that before I agree with that.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, I'd like to ask Ms. Amber, if we did this on a large scale and had these all over town and so forth, does your energy committee take into consideration any historic overtones that this would in some way detract from the historic value of our town? In other words, if you have these things dotted all around everywhere, granted, you can put them on your house, on your roof, but if you start putting them ground mounted, as you're saying, on a structure, say in a median down the middle of the highway, and I'm for solar energy, but I'm just wondering whether your committee takes into consideration at all anything about the historic value and the historic character of our town when you talk about this.
I think one of the main reasons we were looking at the light industrial zones was because of that. To keep it in places where industry, right, the term light industrial is indicative of industrial use.
Right.
So that was the extent of what our thought was, is looking at the space where, parking lots, and large parking lots and utility lines, those are not in keeping with the historical character of our community.
True, but for instance, the idea that was mentioned just a moment ago about putting it in the parking lot at the community center, that's not an industrial area.
But we also wanted public use and municipal use to be covered as well.
I know that, and public use
it's everywhere.
property is sprinkled all over the town. And
All the
so,
schools.
There's a strip of it on
I'm
28A.
just saying, I'm just asking whether or not your committee has taken into consideration the historic implications of putting solar panels on the ground all over town. That's all I'm asking.
Sure, and as I said, we have thought about it, and the reason we were looking primarily at the light industrial areas is because of that, the nature
Okay.
of that.
Thank you.
Jim,
Yes,
Ms. Sampson, I had a quick question. When you have these solar panels, you have to get permission to tie into the grid. And I understand there's going to be limits on how much the electric companies are going to permit tie-ins. How does that affect your program?
I can't speak to that until we know what the caps are set,
But there
where
are
they're
caps.
set at. Sorry?
There are caps. There
Right,
are
and
limits.
there are multiple proposals before the legislature right now to move those caps up, and they're based on size of the systems
and that sort of thing, and I really can't speak to that until it's all signed off on and
The caps I'm familiar with are two, well, it's a 10 megawatt per public entity, and that's the limit. The town of Falmouth is a public entity, and in our negotiations with the EDIC the EDIC will also become a public entity, so there'll be two entities in town that can do it for municipal purposes, if we're talking that. Private's a whole nother thing, but I can speak to the municipal thing, that there will be two organizations in town. The town already has one, the other one will be the EDIC, and it's 10 megawatts each.
My point is...
That's what I was trying to figure out before, how is this all going to get, are you proposing that these would be municipal uses or private?
He's going too depth in this.
on municipal
Yes,
property, they would
where
be
this
municipal.
power, I kept asking where the power's going to go, and it was suggested that was...
Chairman, point of order. We're going too deep into this. She's bringing a bylaw before us to ask if this is something we want to look at. It's up to us as this board to determine what the restrictions would be if we think it's viable.
I
It's
believe
not.
this is a public discussion.
But it's not up to her to have to answer everything you're asking.
No, it's not, I'm not, sorry, I didn't mean to treat her like she's an applicant and this is all we're doing. I was treating this as a public discussion, and I was participating in it, about it, and they're all things I think we need to study. I am very much in favor of this, I just think we need to do a lot of work on it, that's all.
Maybe, I don't know if anybody else in the public might want to comment.
Yeah, I just have some questions. I'm looking at the size of the installations, and it talks about 250 kilowatt occupying approximately 1 acre of land. Is there a cap on the number of kilowatts on a piece of, if I have 5 acres of land, can I have 250 per
The net
acre?
metering regulation stipulates that you may not have more than 2 megawatts per meter.
Okay.
So
So
if
somebody
you had-
couldn't create their own little power plant?
you would have to get special permission for that. As a resident, I mean, that's part of the whole interconnection process and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's a utility question.
I think I would like to understand how it fits into the net metering and the size before that's what I was trying to get at, but thanks you for pointing that out, that's where I was headed.
And I've seen different, again, different towns have set their caps for different areas, right? So that you could say, well, we would like to cap it at such and such a size. This number of kilowatts would be allowed in this area. So, in residential light, what was it, light A, where you said that there are residential areas? So let's say you have, I'm just, again, totally pulling this out of the air, a 20 kW cap based on the parking lot size there. And of course, shading comes into it. There's a lot of other things that come into play here that suddenly make a lot of these sites not viable, because trees, and you have to make sure that there's no shading, and that that the interconnection is viable, and lots of other things. So.
Okay, if you have a minute, we have someone else who'd like to speak. You can come back.
Nancy Hayward, Precinct 5. Production of electricity is one thing, and who's going to take the electricity is the other thing, because my husband is an electrical engineer, and I had this lecture from him. There are only two things well, maybe three if you talk about putting it into the grid. You can use electricity to pump water up, so that when you pump the water up, you can get the electricity back when the water falls down. The only other thing that you can do is store it in batteries, and batteries are still a very questionable thing. I don't know, is it Elon Musk or somebody out west is working on batteries and that sort of thing. So unless the electric company and you know more about what the electric company is taking now into their grid, there's no sense unless the person that's producing electricity with their solar panels is going to use it right there. And I don't know how you do that calculation, but that's what you need. You need good electrical engineering on this, and it's a complex thing to feed it into the electrical grid. And you can have limited batteries to store it in the battery, but it is possible to have too many solar panels trying to produce. It's a wonderful idea, and I think of all sorts of things, and I appreciate Ralph's question about historical quality. And if I were at the Historic District Commission meeting, I'd be listening to talk about putting solar panels on a couple of houses in town. Keep thinking about an appropriate bylaw for this, but think about what's going to happen to the electricity after you produce it.
I wanted to suggest to the board that we look really hard at light industrial B, only because I think it's an area we know where it all exists. It only exists in one place in town. It's the industrial park. And I think we need to take a look at other areas and study this bylaw quite a bit. But I think B we could get to work on faster than the rest and take small steps. I think launching ahead without doing a lot of homework is a dangerous thing to do. Anybody else? Any other comments?
I agree with that. You're talking about making it a by right.
In B,
B.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Michael Galasso, Chairman of the EDIC, and as many of you know, we've become very involved in solar energy over the last few months, and we'll be bringing forth a proposal, and as you know, we were able to get the change on at the landfill. You discussed a couple of things. If you drive to Bourne, just before you get to the Rotary, you'll notice on your right-hand side there's a community solar garden there. In that particular case, because I own some property in Bourne, the residents and property owners, not the municipality, were able to use the benefit of that solar garden. So it's a large solar production center, and you as a property owner are able to buy in. It's like a co-op, and be able to reduce your electrical costs. So as you think of changing zones that will allow ground-mounted, there are these community solar parks that would be beneficial too. Also, if you're considering where best to put them, MIT actually has an interactive map that you can use that will map locations in the community that show where you get the best benefit from solar. So as you go through and decide where to put it, might be a resource you want to take a look at. Thank you.
Thanks. Good.
So Brian, we need to do some work on this.
Great. All right, so the board wants to move forward.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Yeah,
And we want to start with light industrial.
I think I would like to suggest that we start with light industrial B and probably take a look at what other prime areas could possibly work and how we could address the needs and balance the other items we've discussed tonight.
Everybody understands, we're looking at this time next year,
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
or November,
If you can get it done.
or November.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just to make sure everyone understands it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else in the audience on this? Yes.
Thank you. I'm Ron Zweig, I live in Precinct 1. And I think one thing that you may not be looked into, maybe I'm asking a question if you have looked into these things, but because Eversource covers Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution factors into this discussion. And you may need to look into that in terms of how things are limited in some ways. I mean, the cap you're talking about is one thing, But within that, there are some aspects that need to be just to look into, as well as the Public Utilities Regulatory Policies Act that promotes renewable energy for domestic production as well as energy efficiency. And that's another overriding law that is a federal law that affects how things can be basically constrained at the local level, as well as the Massachusetts Global Warming Solutions Act that also promotes renewable energy production and energy efficiency. So these are factors that need to be overlaid over, a local body. And I suggest those things you may wish to consider them.
Are you telling us the federal government tells us we can't pass bylaws, or should we just have this bylaw reviewed by our council before we do it?
No, it doesn't say, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the structure of a bylaw should take into consideration these factors. I'm not saying the government's telling you to do anything. I'm just saying that there are certain statutes that govern these types of projects.
I hope town council's aware of that, and he should guide us.
Project. Well, he might be.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a specialist in everything. The town council's not a specialist in everything, so it's very good information that you brought forward.
Overlying or related factors that just need to be, I would suggest be considered. It's just a suggestion as you formulate.
Yes, Pat?
Brian, are you aware of those?
There are certain federal preemptions, just like the FCC has preemptions for, let's say, cell towers.
Okay.
And yes, we are vaguely aware of them. We appreciate the comment.
Well, there's a few more, but
Oh, there's-
go into them
we-
tonight.
we-
There's a lot of them. But
Lots of federal preemptions.
since 1973 especially, when we had that energy crisis situation, a lot of things came up, and then since then, it's been building to try and create greater local self-reliance or greater security in terms of energy production, and that these things are need to be factored in. I would suggest you look at least consider it in terms of how any bylaw or existing bylaws are structured.
Well, the reason for my question is whether Brian would find it helpful if you would simply email him those that you mentioned. I don't know.
That's fine.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Can I make a motion to go back to the original agenda?
Yes, you may.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll go with the accessory apartment bylaw. This is, again, the public discussion. So, you have a draft of this, Brian, that's been shared with some of the local housing agencies in town. They've had time to look at it.
Correct. In your package, that's correct. In your package, you'll see we have comments back from Attorney Moynihan,
I saw those.
and I believe others. And the thought your process was tonight, is there anyone in the audience who may want to share their thinking on the draft? That'd be great. If not, you can go over those comments that you will receive in writing. Or if you have written comments.
Right, we have written comments to
you may
review.
want to go, as soon as anyone in here wants to speak to it. If not, we'll go back to Maura's comments.
Anyone here to speak specifically on this that hasn't submitted their comments in writing prior to this? Wants to bring it up? You're welcome. Please introduce yourself and come up to the mic.
My name is Catherine Harity. I've lived here 40 years. And I'm just talking as a resident, not for any group. And I've been very aware of this bylaw because I bought a rental property for my retirement income, and there's a structure that is not habitable, but it's perfect for a small, one-person, low-income resident. And under the current bylaw, it's not allowed. And under your revisions, it's almost allowed. But part of the bylaw says that the landowner or the landlord must live in the structure where the accessory apartment is. Well, I don't. I've lived in my own house for 40 years, and I bought this 4-family rental with a building behind it. And it's not allowed to be lived in, but it would be a perfect rental for one affordable person, a couple at the most. And I would like to have the opportunity to do it. So again, this is just a personal statement to your board that as you're revising the bylaw, I can see the reasons you don't want to have non-resident landlords, or the reason you do want to have resident landlords. They can keep track of the property, they can monitor the condition of the property, the people who are in there. I live a mile from what I bought, and I drive by it twice a day. I stop in several times a week. The tenants have been there between 3 and 10 years, so it's almost friendships. So I'm just asking if you can possibly consider in your bylaw letting Falmouth residents who don't live right in the structure still apply for an accessory apartment legality. Because right now, my structure is not legal, so I don't have anyone in it. And it's just a terrible waste of what would be a great affordable, it's a little cabin, whether it's an apartment or a cabin. It would just be great use. And I've owned this 14 months, and it's been empty. Previous owners just put people in illegally, which a lot of people in this town do. They have illegal apartments, illegal in-laws, illegal little structures, and I think your motive to let these people come forward and legalize them is great, because it will help a lot of people have choices of affordable living. And the other reason I think it's great is if any of them get in trouble when they have illegal tenants, their insurance won't cover them if there's any problem. I've asked my insurance company. And if there's a fire and someone's hurt, there goes their whole livelihood. I mean, besides the person being hurt. So I am just saying that I support your revising the bylaw. I think it's wonderful. I think it'd be great if you could also include Falmouth residents as well as people who live in the structure. Because Falmouth residents will always be there to monitor, to have a relationship with the tenants. It's not like buying places from Boston and then doing expensive summer rentals. I like the way you limit it to not be summer rentals. These are rentals for people who really need places to live. And I just had a tenant leave after a year. She'd been there 10 years. Her son had been born there, and she moved to Weymouth. And I put it on the Hui MBL rental site, and within one day, I had 10 people. There's so many people out there looking for rentals. And anyway, I'm just a resident. I don't represent a group, but I'm very glad you're looking at this. And if you would consider it also including people who live here but don't live in that structure.
I want to see if, I have a question, but I want to see if anyone else on the board does first. Could you say again the property described that you're saying to display? Is this a single-family home that you're talking about, and you want to have an accessory unit to that home, but you don't own it? Is that the issue?
It's an old house, built in 1820, and a little cabin was built behind it by the owner who lived there in the 70s. And because she and a neighbor didn't get along, the neighbor complained, and the town took away the habitability of it and just said you can use it for storage. But now that the town is getting more aware of needing affordable rentals, and again, this was 40 years ago, I would like to bring it back in. If this is part of your bylaw, I'd like to come back after town meeting and apply to you to have it legally accepted. I'm not asking for that now. I'm asking for it after you draft your bylaw. But I would appreciate if in the bylaw you include, there's a very exclusive sentence saying that you have to live in the residence in order to apply for this accessory. But there's a lot of me, okay, I'm just talking about me. I don't live in the residence, and I don't plan to move into this house that has 4 apartments, just so I can make the one legal.
Wait, that's what I was getting at. Now, the house has 4 apartments?
Yes, and they're all legal, they're all
Okay, so
taxed by
you would
the
try
town.
to, in your case, you're suggesting you want a 5th apartment on this site.
There's an unused cottage.
Would that be the 5th unit on this
That
site?
would be the 5th unit, and it has 3 septics, it has 10 parking spaces, it has everything that you would look at and accept, and I keep all my rents below what the affordable level is, just because I have locals who can't pay the affordable level. So again, I'm just asking for me to consider it, and there are probably many people like me who don't keep track of it as closely as I do. And when I bought it, I knew I couldn't rent it. Every landlord in the past 25 years has rented it, but I refuse to do it. Not only the town law, I'm a lawyer and I don't want to be caught in an illegal situation. And also, I don't want to have something that an insurance company won't cover. It's just too dangerous a situation. So I'm just saying, from an individual, if you would please consider that. I know Attorney Moynihan wrote you a letter, and I totally agree with her. And I think if you're a Falmouth resident, even if you don't live in that actual structure, you shouldn't be denied the right to apply for an accessory apartment legality.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Hi, I just want to compliment you guys for doing this. I think it's a good step. I think it's needed, like Catherine said, it's very needed in the town, and it will give us an opportunity to create, I hope, some units get into compliance, open up some avenues for folks who haven't previously, if you're not familiar with the ins and outs, the WHOI MBL lists or the shadow market, you've really been out in the cold. So I think it's a good effort on your part. Good job. I just have a couple, I did send some written comments in, and the revision looks great. I just have 2 little things. I wasn't clear on how, maybe it's the certification or the affidavit that you would make sure that the units weren't rented for the summer. Is that what the thinking was? That the reference to the affidavit from the owners annually would also state that there would be no summer or weekly rentals? Is that how you do the compliance?
We haven't gone into it that deeply.
Yeah, I don't think that was the real intention, but
Number 6.
originally, there was no summer rentals. We all came to
Yeah.
agree on that. And the affidavit, I think, just testifies as to your residency.
Oh, okay. Well, so that would be a question that I expect will come up. And then the other point is just that the 2 bedrooms and the 800 square feet, that's pretty little for 2 bedrooms. The units over here, God feels hot, the biggest is 550 square feet, and it's their studio, open concept micro units. So that's not a whole lot bigger, what the bylaw states. So I think you'd be hard pressed to get 2 actual bedrooms in there. But I suppose if it's just a bylaw and the market can do what the market does, if that's the intention, then so be it.
I've seen lots of 652 bedroom units in town,
I lived in one in the North End.
so they do exist.
Yeah, there's
These are supposed to be small accessory. I
Yeah.
think that's
Okay.
why we wanted to keep that size.
Yeah.
My understanding of the size was to make it look like it's accessory to a building and not become a housing development. And
Yeah.
that's where some of the concerns were. So we're trying to balance on both these issues. They were brought up to balance other people's concerns, and that's why we are where we are.
And I think if it were an existing, being that we're probably going to retain the special permit authority, even though some people have asked us to consider by right, I think that we could determine if it was perhaps 850 or something that was something existing, we could probably make that decision if we want
Up to
to.
the boards.
Is that right, Chairman? Do you think?
Yeah, that's what we're here to do, to figure out,
Right.
to make the rules.
I do think it's a good effort, and good job.
Okay.
No, not you again. Yes,
Thank you, Michael. The last thing, Mr. Chairman, just a couple comments, and I agree with Annie, and really agree with the effort that you guys put forth on moving this issue forward. I think it's important for the economic development of our community, and the planning office for putting out the draft. Just a couple comments some I've made previously, but now that I see the draft, I still think that we need to be cautious, and I think that we do need some design guidelines. I think that's most of the successful accessory apartment ordinance that I've seen. My research, there seems to be some good design guidelines that go along with it, and a good design guideline book would, I think, be very useful. We don't want to do this. We've worked hard to move this item ahead, then have some built in a neighborhood that just aesthetically aren't pleasing, and then I think we'll get a lot of people upset, and we'll try to come back and modify the bylaw, which can always happen. I know there's been a lot of comment about the need for a special permit from the Board of Appeals. If you've been through that process, it's not a pleasant process, and I think it's a deterrent in trying to get these built. And I wish we could find a way and be a little bit more creative in getting what we want without having to do a special permit by the Board of Appeals. I suggested before that the town consider hiring an outside architect who could review the plans from an aesthetic standpoint and a code standpoint, and have that be the approval process and not have to go to the Board of Appeals. They're a great group of people. They do a great job for the community, but I'm sure they've got plenty of work. I tend to think that 850 square feet is too big. I mean, these are supposed to be small little, units, and there's a lot you can get into 450, 600 square feet. So you might want to consider whether that size is appropriate. I do think that you need to define what summer rentals are. Maybe it's better to use, you can't rent them on a week-to-week basis. I think that's probably more important than defining it, that you can't rent it as a summer rental. Not quite sure what that means and when the summer is, but I think we're trying to avoid people from renting these out on either a nightly basis or a weekly basis, so you may want to work a little bit more in defining that. You're asking some of the other town departments to do a lot of work to enforce this, and I hope that you come up with a good fee schedule so that it sort of pays for itself, so we're not putting additional burden on the town's budget in order to enforce the ordinance. So I'm not sure whether the fee structure comes from you or somewhere else, but I think there should be a good fee, both for processing the plans and also for implementing the other parts of the ordinance, so whether it's an annual fee for anyone who has an accessory unit to pay for the enforcement, but somehow there's got to be some money to pay for the enforcement. I do agree with the woman who spoke, I'm sorry for her name, prior, that she brings up an interesting issue where we do have some multifamily buildings in town that have adequate land that may be able to support an additional accessory unit. That I don't think we've really thought about that before and see whether or not that would be appropriate. Again, I support doing this in a defined area to start off with, to make sure we get some good projects that we can point to as successful before we spread it out in more of the town. I also think that, I know you addressed the number of bedrooms, but I think that we could use this as an incentive to help out the town in other ways, which is that if you want to do an accessory apartment unit, if you don't have a Title V septic system, that should be a requirement that you have. So I think that's a little carrot in order to get more people to upgrade their septic system. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael, you don't like the term summer rental. Would interval rental solve that problem?
Then you got to define what interval is. I think if you say you can't rent them on a month-to-month basis, on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, but then somebody's going to say, well, okay, I'm doing it by month.
Should there be a residency requirement?
Why don't we just say it's a year-round rental?
We could do that,
Yeah,
too.
it's another way of
12 months.
addressing that. Yeah.
12-month lease, right?
I know that a lot of condominium associations have restrictions as far as what you can do to rent out your condominium unit. Maybe something along that line works.
Yes.
Mike, could you give me an example of what a design guideline component to this would
I
Reed
think
has.
if you go on, like Portland, Oregon probably has, I know it's a bit much bigger city than we are here in Falmouth, but they really have been at the forefront over the last few years on adding accessory apartment units, and they have a great design guideline book that's associated with
Portland.
Yeah, I think, you know.
Oregon and Maine.
Yes, Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
I think we're talking about, as we typically do in A designs, bulk height, material, it doesn't have to be too complicated, setbacks. I just think that it needs some sort of review, and I know that but not only does it need review, but I think it needs some guidance to people who want to do these, so they have an idea of what it is that we're looking at as a community for accessible units. And I don't think you can get that just from the written text. I think you need to give some good examples of how these should be both placed on the lot and what they should look like.
Because I'm thinking of the discussion we had about screening, just that part of it, how you screen entrances and things like that, get into a whole ball of wax.
Yeah. And they don't all have to look Cape Coddish. There are some that look, that are very modern and they work well in conjunction with historic buildings. So, but it just needs a good review.
I have one more. So you've given us a lot of great ideas, but that's a tricky one, because on the one hand, you want to have by right, or at least get out of the special permit, but then how do you implement the design control without the special permit? That's the conundrum.
Hire an outside architect who's responsible for reviewing the plans under the guidelines and comments, and works with the applicant, and even gives suggestions, and the applicant pays for it too. So it's a little different approach by having outside architect be a part of this. But that architect could provide a lot of input to the applicant.
But
the applicant pays for it too. It's not like you go there and you're going to get the architect design it for you. You've got to come in with a set of plans, and the architect provides some input, make sure that it meets, and then it can, report back to the planning office or whatever. I mean,
We're probably going too far, and it's a good point. I like the architect idea. I just don't know where he would come in. If it was, say, a by right use, and they went straight to the building department for their permit, does the building department then say, they're going to review the plan? See,
I think it's a by right use, but before you can submit it for a building permit, you've got to get a stamp by the town architect who was hired by the town to review these.
So I guess he's setting up a design review architect instead of a design review committee. It's a new position we created.
Move it out of ours.
Interesting.
Think about that.
Would that be a design review?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a subcontracted out design review is what it is.
Or maybe a subcommittee of the planning board.
Because we have that authority.
Well, we can talk about it.
Right.
Okay,
Thanks for that.
I want to just put in my comments on limiting it to a year. I definitely think a weekly rental is out, but I think many people only need 2 or 3 months, whether it be winter or summer, and sometimes these people that need housing don't always have the whole year. So I'd want to keep it open to shorter periods, not weekly. But talk about it at least. I don't want to just flat out agree that they have to be annual. I'd like to keep that open for
Are
discussion.
we taking more public comment, or is the board going to discuss this at this point? Because this is
Well,
public
this-
discussion night.
Yeah, it's everybody's discussion, yeah. It's not a hearing, this is a discussion.
I'm just saying it's public discussion. Does anybody else have any?
It's different than a hearing, though. We all can talk at this one.
I guess we also want to discuss Laura Moynihan's
That's next.
points.
Yep. Okay, Brian, you want to talk?
Is the public done?
Any more comments from the public? Please come back.
Yeah, I'm only in this as a resident, but I read that bylaw as existing accessory apartments, like an in-law apartment somebody already has, just wanting to come in and make it legal so they could insure it. Or my little cabin is already there. It's been there 40 years. I'm not looking to build anything where I would need architectural review. I would certainly think there should be something set up so maybe the town building inspector could look at it and make sure that it is in compliance with the current building laws. But it wouldn't be to bring in an architect to build a whole new unit on your lot. And I think most people who have accessory apartments who'd want to legalize them already have them.
Well, this bylaw is to build them, too.
I did see that.
Yeah.
It's predominantly to
Maybe
build.
We're thinking
It's
of building-
predominantly to build.
We passed one to grandfather ones a while ago.
Let's not get too deep into the weeds.
Right,
Right, and on that one, it said you had to live in your,
right.
in the residence. Okay, thank you very much.
I only have a question.
Fire away.
I gather.
Please come up to the mic so they can hear you at home, sorry.
Nancy Hayward, Precinct 5. I gather I missed the boat somewhere. I gather there is a document I should have read, which I see Mr. Galasso has a document in his hand. So I guess I have to go to the planning office to get this document. And I was shocked that you were talking about building accessory housing and not just trying to survey the town to see what,
We've been talking about this for a while.
well,
Can I just
I've
address-
been asleep.
Just to clear, this kind of came about, we're looking at existing buildings where you might have room to chop off a section of the second floor, for example, and turn it into an apartment. Right now, you can't do that. And this is what we were looking at. So when we talk about building, we're not saying that, okay, you've got a backyard, you can put up a cabin there now. We're talking about existing structures and making apartments in those structures.
Thank you for that clarification.
That's not
I
the
think
gist
you-
of this at
I
all.
think- I think you're wrong. I think you were talking about possibly adding structures.
Well, yeah, putting additions on to the,
I thought we were actually talking about the idea, we talked about a Granny Flats type application.
I thought we were looking at if you have a garage, if you, I didn't think we
We're
would,
looking at that too.
I didn't think we were looking
I
at,
didn't think we closed it out, this, but,
No, let me read number 7.
Yeah,
That will
okay,
answer
yep.
this. Number 7 in the proposal, the draft proposal we have here is, the accessory apartment shall be constructed so that to the degree reasonably feasible, the appearance of the building remains that of a
Single-family,
single-family residence or accessory structure incidental thereto. This is where Bob's comment comes with a garage.
right.
So you could build something, if you don't already have a garage, that looks like a garage.
okay, see, I never took it that way.
Okay,
That's,
I looked at it as these are existing structures that you could convert. I never looked at it as you could now put an
yeah,
existing.
that's why
a
the
new
by
building.
right situation is very tricky,
Yeah,
because it
There's really
opens
two different
a
things
lot.
here, at least if my understanding is. We have, if we were doing the conversion bylaw and saying you're doing it within the existing structure, okay, that would be different, because all we'd really have to do is change the date of the conversion bylaw from 1980, bringing it forward, and that would be simply what you're asking to do. This is not. This is adding on. The conversion bylaw doesn't allow you to add on to it.
right.
And the appearance
I
of a
am-
single-family home doesn't mean it can't be a separate unit in the back, yeah?
I just understood it that, like, my property out in Hatchville, I could build another unit out there then. Is that what we're talking about?
If, depending on how we set
You know,
this up.
where it's
When we
zoned.
fit, we're
And
gonna-
I looked at it as, you have an existing building, you can add on to it, or if you have a structure, an existing structure out there, you can convert it.
Well, that's what we're talking about right now. That
Right.
I guess you're saying you're in favor that has to be attached to the existing building.
Yeah, that's how I read that.
What about if it was an existing structure and it's detached now? Would that
Well, that's,
exclude
well,
it?
that's, no,
so you
no,
can convert it.
Can I,
you convert it.
I
See, this
thought,
is the conundrum we're in. We're gonna
I
have to.
thought really,
Right.
We're really not, yeah.
I thought that we were looking to just encompass all possibilities
Yeah, that's what I did
to
too.
increase amount of affordable housing, whether it might be an accessory structure or rearranging of an existing house or adding on to a partial addition to it. I don't think we ruled out anything, and I think the goal is just to increase the
Okay.
availability of affordable little
But
apartments.
we need to
Okay.
discuss that if that's the
Yeah.
way you feel.
But I mean, I was looking at 7
And,
and I didn't see where,
and the other, I think, important thing is to grant relief from some of the regulations that have been making these things impossible to cite.
yeah,
So that's the other important part of the mission.
okay. And then I was totally wrong on that because I looked at it as we were just going to allow conversions and not allow a totally new structure to be built in the backyard.
Well, we're not done yet, so.
Yeah.
We're not done yet.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do right now. That's what we're doing.
So I'm not the only one confused then.
I think where we are right now is a good place to be getting all of this public input and to be sorting out the confusion of various board members here. And I think it's going to take us a while yet
Yeah.
to get this put together. It's not going to come before, I would say, Springtown meeting, because that has to be in, first week in January. So we're looking at fall, hopefully on this, and we would be looking to get a lot more public input as we go along, I think.
Yeah.
I think we have to read number 7 real hard and understand the language
Yeah,
there,
'cause-
because that's really what we're talking about
Right,
right now.
because we don't want to be creating a bunch of little mini
We don't.
residential units, you know.
The key phrase that I saw there is incidental thereto, which means it could be a small little place that you hardly notice that it's a separate unit.
Yeah.
It's mostly hidden by the big structure, but it's not attached. You know, I mean, I've actually seen in one of the bylaws, the example bylaws that actually showed buildings like that. So if you drove down the street, you didn't see all these little apartments everywhere, you know what I mean? It was incidental there too, and you hardly knew it was there, but it fit. And that's, I think, we're semantic, we're getting really defined right now in that, but that was my understanding why that language is there. Brian?
I think I got it. It needs to be clarified.
Yeah,
Whether it's new
and we're not
construction
sure
or
what we want.
existing structures.
Jim,
Yes, Paul?
to just a public discussion, I'd like to make a comment. Several weeks ago, Mr. Galasso came in and presented some very, very good items for discussion here. Some of them are repeated today. One of the things he mentioned last time, and again today, is the have an architectural review of that. At that time, I made a comment that it appeared to me that might be slowing down the whole process. It might be complicating it. But the more I think about it, the more I read this, the more I listen to what he has to say, I think there's some real value in having some design review, whether it's by an architect or someone, to do that as part of this process. So I just want to make that comment because I was sort of against it last time we discussed this. But I think there's some real value in doing that. So thank you for bringing it up again.
Yes, Eddie?
Maybe I'm confused now too, after talking, listening.
It's all open for discussion.
Okay, but, so would the lot coverage rules still apply, or would this, okay, so would that help with the
The answer to your
accessory-
question is yes, it still applies. We're not changing the lot coverage ratios.
Well, yeah, I thought
There's a-
that was part of the discussion.
Well, that's, yeah.
There's a lot of things that haven't been determined, and one thing that we might change, it could change 5 other things in this bylaw. Just, so you know, there's a lot of things, because somebody says something, you go, wait a minute, but that creates something else elsewhere.
I wasn't considering we're changing lot coverage ratios, because that,
Not lot coverage, but
Said we
the,
weren't going to.
there was a large lot requirement.
right, but the lot coverage ratio means no, 20%.
No, I don't mean the percentage, not the lot coverage
Okay.
percentage, but the 10,000 square foot per bedroom. I
That's a
thought we were
different story.
Right,
That's a different story.
so in that
We need,
sense,
I think that's addressed in talking about, if I read Laura's letter, she wants to, that is addressed in her letter, and it talks about maybe covering that with denitrification.
and those are good points,
And I think, but those are 2 different issues.
right.
The.
Correct. I'm not looking to change
I
the
just want to
total-
say, that my understanding is we are not impacting the lot coverage ratio, and I
no.
wouldn't want to do that, because you're really changing how the town
No.
looks, big time if you do that.
I'm not talking about changing
Okay.
setbacks or percentage coverage.
The issue on the 10,000 square feet per bedroom issue, or as a Board of Health issue, and Attorney Moynihan has suggested, as I read her letter, that that be studied with denitrification or some other things, and that's open for, that's what I read.
Right.
Do we wanna,
Are we on
Good
the,
thing we're hashing
no,
all this out.
but do we wanna discuss Attorney Moynihan's,
We have been,
Letter.
kind of.
we might as well, huh?
no, we haven't hit the big one.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the biggest one is the requirement for the owner occupied. This from day one, I don't understand there's people out here that might want to see it differently, but our whole intention throughout the town, and I don't think you'd ever get anything passed through town meeting if you're now all over going to have property owners, that investments, the accessory use
agree with you.
bylaw was for somebody living in the house. Think of you're a neighbor, and somebody owns a house next to you, they own a house next to you. They could then add apartments to these, and you'd be sitting there with two families on either side of your house. And that's not the reason to do this. We're trying to get an owner-occupied home so they can maintain it and maybe make some extra money and have a nice rental out of it.
That was our intent.
Yeah, and this definitely goes against that. But one thing that made me also
What
look
point
at,
number in her letter you referring?
the very
The owner
first
occupancy.
one. Owner occupancy. I mean, it wasn't intended for investor properties to create
Yeah.
accessory apartments on their rental homes. That would become making two-family rentals. The other thing, this also makes me, we talked about the wording of the summer rentals or how that is. And in our first draft, it says, the principal, I can't read without my glasses. The principal or accessory unit owner occupied for a period of 7 months. I think somewhere in there, it needs to be the owner occupied property should not be able to be rented at all. Because now we're getting into what we put before, the accessory apartment could not be summer rentals, but that doesn't mean when you let somebody leave the house for 5 months, that doesn't mean they won't walk out and then all of a sudden turn their primary residence into a rental for 4 or 5 months out of the year. So that's the wording that I think we need to add.
We got to be careful. Part of this idea is to allow flexibility that a primary owner of the home could live in the main home and then,
Whatever one they live in, they just can't rent that one. Doesn't mean if it's the accessory or whatever.
what if they wanted to change? Their needs get older. They no longer need the big house. They want to move
No,
to
no,
the
I'm saying
small
they
house and
can't
out the
rent
big
whatever
house.
one they're in. Doesn't matter whatever they change. See, what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to avoid the summer rental thing. You can live in the house 7 months, so you go to Florida for 6 months, and they say, well, forget it, I'll
Oh,
go
I
back
see
to
what you're
Florida
saying. They
and
can't
rent my
turn-
house out for the summer.
So you're
Trying to avoid the two renters in this accessory apartment dwelling
You
unit.
might be trying too hard, but I understand where you're coming from.
I don't think we're trying too hard. I mean, that's,
Because in my memory of this, which could be faulty again, is that whichever unit the owner occupied had to be year-round, not 7 months.
But they can move to the other one if
They
they
can
want.
move to the other one.
or they can move to Florida for 5 months if they want to,
But
or
they can't
whatever.
rent
But
it.
they can't rent
So
it.
they
That's what I
have to
mean.
remain vacant for those.
It's their owner occupied, so you don't rent out a year-round home. You know? I just saw that when
Yeah.
Attorney Moore. The whole point of that is try to protect neighbors and people that live around so they don't end up with the two renters in a non-owner occupied rental. And another thing is about the permitting. If we don't have a permit, I know different ways to get away from it. If you don't have a permitting process, you have no control over these accessory units and/or primary units. So if the person decides, I want to rent my accessory and it's by right, and I want to rent my main house out, and then they move somewhere else, how are you going to do anything about that if there's no permit?
There is
Special permit to enforce it.
Every rental unit in town has to be inspected annually and get a permit right now.
No,
Every
I'm
single
talking
one.
about if you give it by right versus a special permit. That's what I mean. If we made that by right, some type of by right rather than special permit.
Okay, so
That
when
could
you
create
say-
another
When you
problem.
say permit, okay, I see what you're getting at. You want it to be a special permit.
How many of those rentals do you think are on the books?
That's the problem with why we're trying to, the conundrum we're here is how do we do it right and still loosen it up
Right.
so it can get done? And that's, the group before us did this, and they put on all these good ideas, and no one built a damn thing. So we're trying to avoid that issue by understanding it and making the right decisions. So we got some work to do here.
The reason that this was put as the owner occupied for 7 months is because a number of the people who might own these homes do go to Florida during the winter. But so somehow, we don't want to
You don't want it
say
to turn
you
into a
can't go
winter
to
rental.
Florida, but you don't want it to turn into a rental.
The same difference.
Period.
You don't want them to go to Florida for 5 months and make it a winter rental.
Right. So
You know, that was the
whichever-
crux of how you survived here.
Yeah, I'd be
But
careful.
we're trying to give a single-family home an access to have 2 families in it. So you got to give and take there. I mean, you can't have developments, neighborhoods with 2 families all over, and then them all be rented, not owner-occupied. And that's only the stipulation you're putting in.
Well,
Comment? We have a
we'll
comment?
be working on that.
Annie has.
Yes?
So I just keep thinking back to when we were working with Judy Barrett, and we were talking about the changing demographics of the town and how we're primarily single-family residences and we have an aging population and the homes are too much for people. When I saw this initially, I thought of, young people needing a place to live in the accessory smaller unit in a single-family house, but I also thought of, older people who have a house, they don't want to get rid of it, they'd like to have, maybe a little visitable micro unit or accessible, they'd be in the accessible unit, and a
Right.
family would rent the big house, and they
Right.
could have sort of it wouldn't really be, but a cooperative living situation where the senior person could be in their home, they're still the property owner, the family has housing, which is also a huge need.
I believe that's what we're talking about. That's
Yeah.
what this is doing.
And one of the comments,
In that, but when you were talking about the 2 rentals, I think if you have the one owner.
Well, this,
like,
And that's why I'm trying to say we need to
yes.
put restrictions
Yes.
so it will make people
Look like
want to
that.
understand
so
that,
if the
that
owner's
you can
still on
switch.
site,
We don't
Doesn't
want,
matter which unit they're in.
I guess
No.
he's saying it never can be occupied by 2 tenants.
the owner
So
occupied,
it's one rental.
yes.
Yes.
And the owner chooses which, if they want to switch to the little one later or
They
whatever,
can do it.
but they
And
have to
it's
live on
year-round
their own.
rental.
Yep, and if they choose to go away in the winter, so be it. That's their
Right.
personal business,
Right.
but they're not going to rent it.
Right.
That's what we want to make sure doesn't happen. Or I want to make sure it doesn't happen.
Suppose that's a compromise that might move this along, we'll talk about it.
Well, that was just my comments on what
Right.
Attorney Moynihan brought up and what I saw in this as well.
Well, we're obviously not done tonight, but have enough to work on, Brian?
Well, I'd
He
like to
needs another pen.
get into the other comment that Attorney Moynihan had made about the smaller lots. We're excluding a lot of smaller lots. And we did make mention that if they were connected to the municipal sewer, that, it would be more acceptable. But she brought up a point that why not consider denitrification systems?
I think we have to if we're going to move this
Right.
forward,
Because they're-
because it's going to be 50 years before we have sewer in other places we need it.
And there's a ton of
If we really
small,
want to have this happen, we need to come up with some solutions for that.
right.
I don't know what they are yet, though.
Well, I think there's a pretty clear one right there. Where did she word that?
That's on the next page.
Okay, if the lot is within a water resource protection district, Article 15, or coastal pond overlay district, Article 21, the total number of bedrooms shall not exceed 1 per 10,000 square feet of lot area unless both the principal and accessory dwellings are connected to the municipal wastewater system. She adds, or the property or accessory apartment is serviced by an enhanced nitrogen removal septic system, denitrification system in parentheses, approved by the Falmouth Board of Health in conjunction with the principal dwelling or alone. And I'm surprised that we didn't think of that, but that's a good point.
I actually thought that would have to be. I didn't
Right.
see it any other way. Actually, it's a Board of Health issue that we don't even have control of.
But it gives us more flexibility.
Brian, you have to help us here?
Oh, yeah, it's a fine addition, or equal.
Yeah, I actually assumed we'd have to do that. Didn't see how we could get this passed.
I think the coastal pond overlay district has that caveat.
Right.
But
I don't think-
we'll make it clear that,
And I think Virginia, Vallela, and others have gotten up in the past and said, don't
Don't
go there.
don't
Let's
forget
just
it.
put this in. Yeah.
But I mean, as far as easing that 10,000 square feet per bedroom.
Well, there's the solution with if the systems could be designed.
Right.
Well, we're doing a lot of work on this tonight. We have one more we haven't discussed yet. Accessory apartment affordable loan program.
put it on the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Well, the letter was written, it was brought in. I didn't,
Are you finished with this? or-
Well, this is still part of the same discussion, isn't it?
it's actually a different agenda item.
Right, but it's the same.
This is the town doing some funding on it.
So we're done with this.
Yeah, for tonight.
For tonight, I'll try to work on it a bit for the board, and try to come back incrementally with some
Yeah.
changes.
Right.
You've got a lot of changes on
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Some you can do, some you can't do. And we can get into some of into the details of some of the comments you hear tonight, and perhaps over the next couple of weeks. If we're not moving towards the April town meeting, then I'll take my time on the point.
Yeah,
It
we
sounds as though you want to defer this to November. That's,
I don't want to, but I think we have to.
I think with this one, you're gonna need more public comment.
And we're not close enough as the board.
Is there
yet.
one more question? Could I ask one more question of Brian on that? Attorney Moynihan's point number 8 about compliance. I'm not sure I fully understand that, and I wonder if you could help me. A written determination by the building commissioner that the owner failed to comply with these provisions shall be evidence that the rights and benefits conferred under the special permit were abandoned or otherwise surrendered and discontinued by the owner, and upon issuance of such written determination, all such rights and benefits shall lapse, or components of the accessory apartment that deem it as dwelling pursuant to this bylaw shall be removed from the property within 90 days of said determination, with such removal complying with all requirements of the state building code and other local regulations or bylaws. That's one that I think she's volunteering to help us with the language of the enforcement, and I wonder if you have read that and feel like that's appropriate.
I looked at it, the wordsmithing, I think a written determination, that's a good change. Essentially, you'll get, it was understood, a final determination is typically in writing, but we'll make it specific in the bylaw. So yeah, some of the wordsmithing here is fine. And again, I haven't reached any conclusions that, quite frankly, on any of the comments. But we'll take it into consideration. We'll see if we can get the wording right. See if we can work within our state statute. I wish I was in Oregon. I wish I was in, Florida sometimes, or New Jersey. They're way ahead of Massachusetts. And we'll go from there.
I would like to stay the same. Just because we listened to all the comments doesn't mean we agreed to them all.
Actually, you really agree with a lot of the comments,
Yeah, but-
and then we have to work within the scheme of the Massachusetts statutes that aren't always up to, will be very not, even Rhode Island standards.
And then she had some other comments about,
Rhode Islanders.
she had some last comments about definitions, which may be pertinent.
Yeah, I guess once you start moving things, you move things everywhere.
Right.
So we'll go back, obviously if you change this definition, we have to go back to 13, and we'll go for a program, we'll go sort of root out, where we see the word, accessory, make sure we capture the other section of the file.
Right. Okay.
Yes, Ralph?
Yeah, Brian, when you get into enforcement situations such as the paragraph 8 and Attorney Moynihan's memo, don't you have to have, isn't there usually, I would say, maybe, an appeal process?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so I think you have, so if you're going to have that paragraph, then you're going to have some kind of, if the property owner disagrees, then they should be able to appeal to somebody.
Sure, I think that's why we had the word final, because once it's final, it assumes you've gone through the appeals process.
Yeah.
We'll work on that language.
Yeah, okay.
It's fairly automatic, you have the right to appeal, from the building commissioner to the zoning board to the court. So we'll see what we can do.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the funding article here, okay? Well, we have, it was brought up as an example that the town of Barnstable has a program through their Community Preservation Act that they actually can do some funding for the construction of these units, up to $20,000 in various different, before we get into the actual financing and how it's done, interest rate or whatever, what do you think about it in general, the idea of the town through because of using the Community Preservation Act because of housing and actually building some of these units? It's discussion.
As a former member of the Community Preservation Committee, it sounds like a pretty good idea. And this town has the ability, and you don't want to talk about funding, so I'll hold my comments on that, but there are...
The structure of the funding, like the interest rates and whatnot. The concept is what I...
Okay, well, the Community Preservation Committee adopted, in the town, adopted a funding mechanism that wouldn't require people going to town meeting to get this loan. Okay, it could be approved by the Board of Selectmen if it was recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. It would not have to go to town meeting.
Okay. Down the other way, Doug.
I think it's a great way to bring in the affordable aspect of it, because we're trying to make this broad-based and not restrict it to affordable units, but people that want to get some help can get a little help here. But I suspect that being the CPC funds, that's for affordable housing, so I think they would probably have to make their units affordable. So I think that's...
There might be a deed restriction that show up.
It might, I would think it would probably be that, but that might be something that they would consider if they need a little financing. So maybe it's a good thing.
It's worth talking about.
Seems like a good idea.
Yes, Paul?
Well, as a member of the Community Preservation Committee, I have concerns about this because, as I understand it, there is a housing element for funding community preservation, but this would require getting into a loan process where they would loan money and then be paid back in some fashion. And I'm not sure that's what the Community Preservation Act requires, getting into lending money and repaying money out.
Well, it could be a grant. We were just first talking about where the source of funds, and then the structure is another comment, but would you be in favor if it was a grant, or is it just a loan you're...
I think the loan concerns me, and this thing from Barnstable talks about a loan program.
Yeah.
And I think that's beyond the scope of
If
what
it was a
community
grant, would it be
preservation
okay with you? I'm trying to get...
Well, a grant would be fine, but I'm not sure how you would apply a grant of $20,000 to individual homeowners. I don't know how you would do that sort of thing. I think we have to think that through a little bit.
I think the only way that I would have voted for something like that was if it made it deeded affordable housing. I mean, we're talking about our town's funds going to this person's private
You don't want to turn it into a
house.
for-profit operation.
Right. So that would make sense. I would agree to something like that.
If we went, I'm open to talk about both of them, Paul. I want to understand your concerns about the loan. I really don't see much of a difference, but let's, I think we should talk about it.
I think we should, but the community preservation is not a bank. It's not lending money and taking payments back and doing those kinds of things. That's beyond the scope of what the community.
Well, we could call it a grant then.
I'm curious as to how this is working.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could
Because
find
I
out.
share your concern, because, it's the CPC going to be knocking on people's door for payment.
I don't know. This was brought forward as an idea for discussion.
I have one comment. I don't think it should be a grant, because then you'll have too many people
Yeah.
using that fund and it's for more things than that, but I think it could be maybe a low or no interest loan, and I don't know exactly what the mechanism would be, but I suspect that they could choose to designate a separate fund if they wanted to. And I suspect somebody in the audience might
Yeah,
have
that might have a little
some
bit more
information
info
about
on
it.
us.
Do you want to speak?
No, I was going to say, there's somebody I bet has a little bit more information on this than we do.
Yes, Annie?
I don't think the chair wants to hear.
Well, you've been up about 7 times tonight, so,
Is there a limit? I
No.
didn't know there was a limit.
Yeah, it was six.
There were limits on,
Six? Okay, well, good to know.
no, I try to go through the board and then go back to the audience, and that's what I was trying to do, is go up and down.
So, and Brian, can jump in here, but the trust fund requires a deed restriction. So, but the trust fund also allows a repayment of loan monies. Now, the town, I don't think has done that yet, but that was one of the reasons the trust fund with the CPC and the Board of Selectmen proposed the special legislation, because the CPC money, the CPA funds, are going to go away at some point. And so there was a concern about recapturing funds.
Yeah.
There's lots of incentivizations that you can apply, and there are many models. There are sunset deed restrictions, so for 5 years, the unit will be affordable for, say, 100% of area median income, which is usually not, usually doesn't count, but the CPA money can go up to 100%. The trust fund won't allow that. It has to be 80% or below. This is our municipal trust fund that exists now. I think you're going to get into...
Were we saying these funds were coming from the trust fund? I thought we were saying these are coming from the CPC. Am I on the right discussion?
The CPC votes annually to allocate funding to the trust fund. The housing
So
money...
you're saying it has to go through there, it can't go, CPC can't,
I think the CPC decides, as a committee, if they're going to fund the trust fund. That's my understanding.
well,
That's true.
yeah, I remember that.
There was
And that's where the money comes from,
initially
is the trust
a bunch of
fund.
money was put into it,
Yeah,
and it's not necessarily funded every year.
No.
It depends on what the drawdown is.
Yeah. But the only way to recapture funds is back into the trust fund. And that was part of the reason for creating it, and also the ability to act more
so you're
quickly.
suggesting this could be done, but only through the trust fund, not just the loan outside the trust fund?
I think a lot of your discussion with about 10 minutes of phone call with Brian or Heather or Sharon Gay would wrap it up, and you'd know exactly what the parameters are for a loan program like this.
Well, I thought we could make them up, too. I didn't think we have, I'm keeping the doors open to designing a
Well,
new
you're
one.
talking about using money that's regulated by the Massachusetts general laws, and so you have some creativity as a local municipal regulatory board, but not, I mean, that money, right, Brian, or you?
Also, the question is,
Yeah, I'm just,
The
so you're saying we can't do a loan here? You're telling us that what we're discussing now we
She
can't
never
do
said
unless we
that.
do it?
No, I'm saying you can do a loan through the trust fund.
can we
Those are deed restricted.
Well, we'll look into it, thank you.
just say, in 2011, the town did vote to create a trust. And the trust is able to loan money. The city of Cambridge has these types of trusts, but lots of cities and towns have these, but they also have the ability to administer, because you become a bank. I think we went through this program with 761 T-Ticket Highway. We went through it with Oddfellows Hall. We went through it with Glenwood Avenue. You still has to go through the entire underwriting and closing. We hired special counsel to close on Oddfellows Hall. So yes, you can loan money, but it does take a lot of overhead. And it does take the ability of the town to administer this loan program. So the money, the upfront money is there. I think there's still about $1 million in the trust. There was originally $2 million. But the antenna to go woods also got, I think, $400,000. So you have to be able to administer whatever it is, a grant or a loan, and you have to have the ability to underwrite it and close it.
Well, actually, in just reading this, it really doesn't matter. We're going to create a law that allows them to build it. Financing somebody else's job. It's not going to be ours.
It's a CPC.
It's the CPC, so this is not something that's really going to be part of our bylaw anyway.
But if it's something.
We
that
brought this
you-
up for discussion, but it's clear it's a CPC issue.
But if it's, that you as a planning board, take off regulatory world hat, and you have a representative on the committee, the Community Preservation Committee, if this is something you think is a worthwhile planning objective, you pass that guidance along and then let the others turn the.
Right, so we'll just pass it along, see if you like it.
Thank you.
Well, I think one of the points that Ann mentioned is the community preservation funds are going to go away
Yeah.
in the next several years, so you got to think about this as short-term anyway.
I don't think that's true.
Oh, I think so.
I don't think that's true.
There'll be a vote in 2020, and I think it'll be over.
That's speculation, but
Well-
I'd take a bet on that.
Be interesting to see. So we have that component we've discussed tonight. I think we've discussed this enough.
Do you want to bring it back for, right now it's sort of hanging out there, but.
We're not done. I think probably we'd like to have the CPC come back and see if they want us to pursue it or not. Because why would we be telling them how to do their funding?
Then I'll have a discussion with Paul.
And if they decide they don't want to do it, that's it.
There you go.
Well, I did get an email just before I came in today that the chairman of the CPC was unable to come tonight. She asked me to brief her on what happened here tonight, so I will call her tomorrow. But she sent her apologies because she intended to be here and she could not come tonight.
All right. All right. That finishes our public discussion for this evening.
Where to go home?
We are now moving into planning board discussion, and people need to understand is we don't get together to talk about things unless we do it publicly. So that's why we have sometimes public discussion and some just inter-board discussion. So this next section is for us to communicate with ourselves about different interests or items that have been brought to our attention. So Brian, you have a couple you'd like to bring up?
Mr. Duffy just wants to bring to your attention this letter from the Attorney General's office. It's in your package. It's dated July 9th, 2013. It's the letter that approved Article 7, which is your wind energy system bylaw. But in the Attorney General's letter, you'll see that they did approve it, but they key paragraphs or the fourth on page 1 and at the bottom of page 2, you'll see that the way we define the accessory land use in the wind energy system bylaw is underlined for emphasis. It says the principal use is located on the same lot or on land held in common ownership as part of a planned residential development. And that's a specially permitted subdivision that has open space. The Attorney General's office points out that although there's a definition under the Green Communities Act, and you see that on the bottom of page 1, that you can have a neighborhood net metering facility owned by or serves the energy needs of a group of 10 or more residential customers that resides in a single neighborhood and is served by a single distribution company. So although the tension between the definition in the local bylaw and the state statute didn't rise to the level of disapproving the wind energy system bylaw back 2 years ago, you'll note that the Attorney General, in the last sentence of page 2, the town may wish to review the bylaw definition with council in light of my comments. I guess the question then comes down to whether or not you wish to review the definition of accessory land use with council. Or do you want to think about it for a while? And whereas you may be looking at the bylaw holistically over the next year or so, did you want to address this a bit more quickly, in that it's 2 years old? So Frank brought it to my attention. I bring it to your attention for your consideration. It's not time sensitive, but it's something the board should be just thinking about and discussing perhaps initially here.
I have a question if I could.
Yes, Doug?
So, is the Attorney General then saying that we should consider allowing wind energy system as a primary use ancillary to this housing development?
I think what the Attorney General's office is saying is that there's a tension or a conflict between our local bylaw and the Green Communities Act state statute. Their ability to disapprove a bylaw is actually extremely limited. You'll note in their letter, it states that, the legislative intent to preclude local action must be very clear, requiring a sharp conflict between the local and state provisions. There's no real sharp conflict there. And that's why they recommend that maybe you want to take a look at it. And if you can be, my sense is, accommodate the Green Communities Act, still being true to the purposes of your local bylaw, you should take a look at it. That's what they're trying to say.
I would think that our bylaws still could stand, because if we had a planned residential development...
No, our bylaws stand.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, against their Green Communities Act idea.
That's what this says.
I know that. Okay, let me finish. So the point I'm trying to make is, if we have a planned residential community and they want to have a wind energy system to serve their 10 or whatever it is houses, it's still accessory to that development, in my opinion.
So look at it this way. I live in Mara Vista. And there's just this 7 acres sitting out there that used to be an old junkyard back in the day. And that's our neighborhood. And we just it's not a planned residential development. It's not a specially permitted definitive plan from you. Well, let's just say for the sake of argument here, it comports with the green communities definition.
That's a good point.
But it doesn't comport with the local definition. That's what they're saying.
I believe we actually did discuss this exact point when we passed our bylaw. I remember it clearly, that we talked about this just for this reason, and this is coming back saying, well, we don't like what you voted for, maybe you should think about changing it. But I remember having discussion and then voting this particularly.
I mean, you can just look at this, and what the green communities, this thing allows is, just like you said, in the neighborhood, 10 people could get together and put windmills next to my house because they bought that land.
Right, and that's the discussion we had, and that's why our bylaw is written the way it is, because we voted that way.
Somebody could buy the land next to your house, put a windmill there, and it supplies power for those 10 houses, and there's nothing you could do about it.
And we said no thanks to that idea.
And we did say no thank you. Is that anyone else's recollection, Pat?
I don't have a recollection of that, but I think even beyond Mara Vista, the community, Falmouth is a town form of government, and we have towns. Woods Hole is a neighborhood, one could say. So the whole of Woods Hole could be a neighborhood. And how do you limit the definition of neighborhood? Because it's just like Ken said, somebody could buy the lot and it serves the neighborhood. What's the neighborhood?
It's just like most of these state initiatives, they're just like, just let anything happen just to get the agenda moving. So I don't think we have to agree to it.
I'm inclined to stay right where we are.
We've considered.
We won't have a discussion with council.
I don't hear anything going forward. We've had a discussion.
Has to.
Yeah, we said we'd talk about it.
The cure would be for the neighborhood to come to you and create the planned residential development.
Right.
I didn't want to come to you right off the bat, but that would be the cure. You see these non-road subdivisions before. So you would dedicate the open space, create the special permit, you'd have the defined neighborhood.
All the special permit protections and all that would all fall into place.
Correct. But I think it's good that you had at least a reaction to the letter. And again, the Attorney General's office approved it. as you move forward, as these things progress, you can revisit the question as to the amount of subdividable land, obviously, in this town. You think about it, it's few and far between these days. So if the need arises, you maybe could get more creative with your planned residential development bylaws to allow existing subdivisions that were created in literally the 20s and 30s to come to you and dedicate, it might be off-site open space for the purposes that you allow in it, and where you can allow golf courses, recreational facilities, farms.
Okay. The next one, town meeting referral of wind energy systems bylaw. Does anyone want to discuss this?
What is the discussion?
This, there, do you want to introduce it, Brian?
So, town meeting voted to refer that article to you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess the approach or the thought process you may want to have is to start, because you need to, in a sense, react eventually. Obviously not because April. But the board needs to essentially, it's been referred to you. You need to either take action or decline. So I guess my recommendation to the board would be to start off with what's new. You did have the prudent avoidance, the abundance of caution methodologies when you initiated the discussions back in, I forget exactly what it was now. When you moved forward, bylaw, went to town meeting, it failed, went back, it passed. At that time you said, we will revisit eventually, some of the aspects of it. So I guess the best approach I could offer the board at this point, seeing how then you have this responsibility, is to start with, okay, what's new out there that might alter our thinking? Fact-based, some sort of reasonable approach. Disregard the article itself, just what the issues that are out there. More than anything else. So I guess that's what my recommendation would be. I'll take a look at what's new. There may be nothing new. You may want to start with, like residential developments, I don't know. But obviously we're not moving forward to this or to the town meeting in April. And maybe dubious for the town meeting in November. But I guess that's the best way to start. What's new?
Doug?
One feedback that I have had from people, not just in Falmouth, but just in general, is that we were way too restrictive stopping at 250 kilowatts. So we may want to revisit just that and see if there's any new equipment out there that's super quiet, and maybe there's some little increase that we could make to that, because maybe we were too restrictive overall. I think in general our bylaw was good and well thought, but that's the only thing that I think there's maybe a little bit of room for us to think about that, because we didn't have that much information, so we were erring on the side of caution.
Okay, sorry.
I actually think that in my opinion, there's nothing new. And under the circumstances that this was brought to us, for the reasons it was brought to us, I would take the opposite stance and say we as a planning board should not take any action to change anything in our bylaw at this point, because it was voted on. If I'm not mistaken, there was, I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe on one of the town meetings, there was a motion on the floor to try to change to what was brought before this article. And that was voted down. And I think the same year the article got voted down. But I do not think we need to step up and do anything to this article and this at all. I don't think we should touch the bylaw. I think it should be as it is for right now.
What does anybody else think?
I think we have two choices here. One is, we spent a year or more working on this bylaw, and we thought we were satisfied it was approved and went forward. And we could just say we agree with it the way it is. The other option is to deal with what's suggested by the Board of Selectmen and open up the bylaw for a number of other activities. There are a number of things in there we may want to address. And it's not only that one issue, but I think it's several other issues we may want to look at. So if we do open it up, I think we look at a number of different issues within the bylaw and then spend some time going through it and make the changes, recommend that to town meeting. And we're not going to be able to do that in April.
That sounds like, are you making a motion that we open up this bylaw?
I'm just saying those are the two options I think we face. Either we say it's fine the way it is, or we open it up for a revision of the bylaw.
What's your recommendation?
Well, town meeting has voted to go back to us, so I think we'd have to open it up for discussion.
Town meeting didn't vote.
The selectmen did.
The selectmen threw it back at
Town
us.
meeting said they endorsed that.
Well,
No, the town meeting didn't endorse it, they just pulled it. There was no vote on that.
Yeah, you're right. There was-
They just gave it back to us because they knew that they sent it out too soon.
I think we have a fine bylaw. I don't see where there's anything new that we need to consider that we could bring into it. Things haven't really changed. Technology and all that, it's not just noise that is the issue. There are other nuances of these machines that create problems. So I think we leave it alone. We spend enough time on it, and I'm satisfied with it.
yes, Pat?
The way it was sent back to us is that we had a negative recommendation on the selectmen's amendment. And we said no. And the general consensus is that the vote wasn't there to get that amendment passed. So the selectmen sent it back to us. That's one issue right there. I don't see any reason to change my perspective on my reasoning to give my negative vote in the beginning on that amendment. The second question is, do we want to, because it's a 3-year-old bylaw, want to look at, is there any new technology that does not create the same kind of nuisance that people in this town have been experiencing without opening up the whole bylaw? It's just an exploration by staff to see, is there anything new that doesn't create the same kind of pressure, the same kind of noise, whatever the effects would be. It would simply be an exploration without any requirement on our board to open up the whole bylaw until we get a report back, and then we can decide whether it's worth opening up the whole bylaw for scrutiny. And I have, to this point, not read anything that there is any change in the technology out there that would obviate the problems. So we may be sending Brian on a wild goose chase too, because we don't really think that there's going to be anything new, and he's going to be spending a lot of time searching this. As you can remember.
I'm concerned about use of our time. I think if somebody wants to make a motion to have Brian explore this and open up, we should make a motion and vote on it.
Other people might have comments, I don't know if Ralph.
I went up and down once, I'll go up and down again. Sorry. Did I miss you, Ralph?
No, I haven't got anything to say yet.
I don't hear any motion.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we not consider doing anything to our bylaw as it currently exists.
I'll second that.
Well, without
Discussion.
time limits?
Not
At this
for
time.
right now,
Oh, as of right now.
because we've been asked to reconsider. And so I would move that we do not do anything to our bylaw right now. If Brian, in his tapping of the keyboard, happens to find something really new and interesting about wind energy, he can simply bring it to our attention.
I'll second the motion.
It's already been second. We're into discussion now.
I didn't hear it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous on that vote. Okay. General correspondence. There was something that was passed to me. I'm sorry, there's been so much paper here, I've lost it.
Yeah, it's piles.
you showed it to me? You did.
Yeah,
When I
it
came in, you
was-
handed it to me when I came in the door.
It was the letter from the league.
From the League of Women Voters.
Yes, so you're looking for that letterhead.
See, it came late. It usually comes in
Yep,
that purple
yep, yep.
folder, or I wouldn't get it
Yep.
lost.
To introduce
There's a
the
letter, Mr.
representative.
Chair, from the league that was hand-delivered tonight.
Yeah,
Here it is.
yeah, okay,
Got it stuck in.
okay.
You want to read it, Pat?
Sure. This is to Jim from the League of Women Voters. This is to introduce Jacqueline Webster to you and the other members of the Falmouth Planning Board.
Hi, Jacqueline.
As a member of the League of Women Voters Observer Corps, she will be observing your meetings throughout the year. Fran Lightsome has been observing your meetings and will continue to do so when she is able. The League has a strong commitment to sound government. To this end, the chief aim of the Observer Corps is to assist all town boards and committees to function optimally, especially in honoring the open meeting law. Both Jacqueline and Fran will attend as many meetings as possible, but will not comment on your proceedings or take part in any discussions. They will, however, write a report for the League at the end of the year. You will receive a copy, and we hope that it will be helpful to you and the board.
Would you repeat your name, please?
Jacqueline Webster. And Fran Lightsome has been here observing us for a while. Okay?
Thank you. Okay. Ideas or recommendations for future agenda items?
I have a request for discussion of notification of interested parties about our actions.
Huh?
Well, we
You
have
got
this,
me. I was like, huh?
we have this ongoing situations where, like, the ZBA doesn't know what we're doing until the last minute, or the Energy Committee doesn't know. I mean, I just think that when we have agenda items coming up, I hope that we can maybe send an email to anyone who we think might be interested. I know it's hard to do, but it's a judgment call.
I know what I do when I want it on the ZBA. I got myself on their list, and I get their agenda sent to me all the time, so I know everything they're doing. That's how I pay attention to
Right.
other departments.
And the planning board does the same thing.
So if they
Okay, well,
want to, they could
So
get,
mine is triggered by this, getting this thing yesterday from the Energy Committee Chair about the state bylaw, or the proposed, photovoltaic locating. And so I just was thinking, if, when we knew this was going to come up, we send a note to the Energy Committee. Maybe they should be studying our agenda, but not everyone can study our agenda,
I
but we
did call
know.
them personally last week to tell them that we're going to be discussing this.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, maybe that could be a standard procedure. It's just, I guess we're discussing it now, but I mean, I
Okay,
was just trying to
I
put
agree.
it on for.
What's the mechanics here? You got an idea let's be clear on the mechanics.
It's
As a
future discussion.
agenda
It's-
item,
right.
We'd like to see something about interagency notifications and coordination. It does go on, it's not a perfect process.
Just maybe we could talk about it, define it.
You mean that if we know, say, 3 weeks in advance that we're going to be handling this on that date,
Ooh,
they
that's
get as
getting
much
tough.
notification as possible?
I don't have a
I don't think
definite
we can-
idea. We'll
I
just
think
discuss
it has-
it.
Discuss it now anyways.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll discuss it when we
Right,
get
we'll
to it.
discuss it on the agenda. That's the right way to go.
Got it.
Good job. Yes, Paul?
At town meeting, there was a lengthy presentation by the chairman of the zoning board of appeals criticizing the action.
Well, thanks for bringing that up.
What I'd like to do is get a copy of that presentation so I can read that. And I requested that, I'd like to see that, not necessarily put it on the agenda, but it would be nice to see what those comments refer to.
Sure.
I've made it into a little YouTube presentation. I'll send it to you. I'm kidding. Joking.
See if there's some substance to the comments.
Oh, there is.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Just one more, at your next meeting,
Next meeting.
now somewhere in the background, there's this scheduled joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on December the 12th. I'll bring that to your attention.
December what?
12th,
12th.
Saturday.
Oh, boy, Saturday.
Even though it's, your next meeting is December 8th, it's your usual Tuesday. We are in the background working on this Saturday meeting. Just so you-
Okay.
Do we want to know how many can attend it?
That would be, if you have an idea whether you can attend that next meeting on, the second to next meeting on December 12th, you should let us know sooner than. I know it's a busy time.
I guess I don't have anything on here.
Oh, darn.
I believe we have
When do we know?
draft agenda for that meeting we could probably share.
Do we know when that meeting is going to be, what the time it was going to take place?
The last time we had a Saturday meeting, it was 9 to noon.
Okay.
Does that work?
I got to find out. That's why I just needed to know if it was earlier or later.
9 to noon was what we did last time. And right now, there's a draft agenda would be your transportation element, that was IP because it was IP. The McMahon, advancing the McMahon study has finalized and made that presentation. And I know there are some resiliency issues that the board wants to talk to the selectmen about. That's a 10-hour meeting, so we'll try to whittle that down for you.
And the wind, I spoke with Doug, and the wind energy bylaw is not on the agenda. He was
Yeah,
not going to bring it up. That's
better
not
not.
up, not on a joint agenda.
But those are the 3 items I put forward on behalf of the board for the selectmen to consider, which my sense is you want to get to your article that was IP'd. That's why I offered it first. If there are other agenda items, let Jim know, and we'll have a discussion with Doug, and hopefully this week.
I think we're going to talk about the accessory bylaw at that meeting, weren't we? Nope?
I think we'll table that, given the amount of discussion.
Okay, we've already got enough information, got too much work to take it any further? Yes. Okay. He and I did talk about it. You're right, we've got enough to chew on now for a long
So
time.
we have some thoughtful comments.
Yeah, try to get it in
To work
November.
on. It will not be at this April 10th.
Okay.
Okay, what are you
Well,
going to adjourn?
Well, the only thing is, I want to make sure that, what my goal was, before we do bring it to April town meeting, that we have a long meeting with them on that bylaw.
Well, it won't be at an April town
It's
meeting.
not going.
No,
But
before we bring
anything we
it,
bring to them.
right, no, but before we're done with the accessory apartment bylaw, we are going to have a joint meeting with the selectmen, is my point.
Right.
Is it really too early to eat, just at least bring the draft and show it to them and talk about it?
My recommendation to the board is to at least get the old business done first. Your transportation element was put off to the next town meeting, so I would start there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as an aside, you said we're still working on this bylaw. It's somewhat global because right now it is all residential zoning districts. I try to stick to global issues with the board of selectmen.
Yeah, if we,
Right, to get into the minutiae of a zoning article with them, I think would not be blessed.
you get 5 different opinions.
Right, so I would stick with the global transportation issues of the community. You've got this $70,000 study on Route 28 that offers you some design solutions for, let's say, Spring Bars Road. There's a global issue I think these 2 elected boards should be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to go into things hard on resiliency too, so.
And I know there's some issues on resiliency that are going to come to the forefront.
Okay, well, as long as
I
it's
think
not just a quick discussion of the goals and policies thing.
Yeah, right. I think the resiliency issues will speak to some of the issues that came forward at the last town meeting that went unspoken because the presentation wasn't made on Article 3. So those are the types of, big picture items I think is time well spent with the Board of Select.
All right, well, that sounds good. I just don't want to waste a Saturday and just talk about the goals and policies and then go home.
I agreed, but I think the design solutions that were presented to you at your last joint meeting, to think about them, and then the resiliency issues are going to come to the forefront here. Comments from, some of the procedural comments about a special permit versus by right. If a hurricane, you have 2,000 roofs blown off homes, you're not going to have a hearing. So these are the global issues for a joint meeting between the elected boards, I think is very important.
Okay. Sold.
Yeah, Jim, what was the thing at town meeting where there was a bunch of money allocated to redo our zoning bylaws, and only a very small portion of that was spent initially? And there's still a big pot of money waiting for an RFP to go out to do that. Am I wrong on that?
We can talk about that as a future agenda item, perhaps?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Sure. You did have a joint meeting with the Board of Appeals. You did discuss the general code report, some 70 pages or 40 pages long with 70 suggested procedural changes and some substantive changes. There are very good reasons right now why an RFP hasn't issued, but it's really not on your agenda. I don't want to get too far into it, but as a future agenda item, I'll hopefully be able to bring it.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, because we were talking about the agenda items for the joint meeting, and I'm talking about, no, I'm not talking about that.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
It was
Yes,
my mistake. We were just talking about the joint meeting.
Joint meeting
Agenda, and
Okay.
my suggestion is
Future.
for our future meeting.
I'll have you
Sorry.
happily brief the board.
We have a meeting on next Tuesday,
Yes,
and we have a joint meeting on the following Saturday.
yes.
And then a meeting on the following Tuesday.
We're going to get tired of
Motion
each
to
other.
adjourn?
And then the following.
Second?
I was asking for one.
I thought there was one.
Yeah, there was.
It
Ken made it a long time ago.
Okay, long time ago, then we're having discussion.
Yeah.
All in favor? Thank you very much.